warm good morning to all of you, respected Alkadi, Manjiri Saurav Bhaiya, Sunita, Rachna and all my dear students, and above all, the speaker, that is Dr. Shaista Irshad. I am very happy to be part of this 6th Students Colloquium, and I will be just in 2-3 minutes sharing with you the idea behind the concept. So at the outset, I would like to say that the topic for this colloquium was given by Manjiri Di, that she wanted we should focus on women writing and specifically on the tribal, regional, and the folk aspect. So thank you so very much, Didi, for giving us this very insightful topic for this students' colloquium. I will begin by quoting Arundhati Roy. She said, "Either way, change will come. It could be bloody or it could be beautiful. It depends on us." Women writing began long back in 6th century BC, and since then has tried registering various dimensions and facets of women over the centuries. Different countries, cultures projected various essence as far as women's writing is concerned. Post-independence writers like Ishmat Chugtai, Amrita Pritam, Mahashigadevi, Krishna Shopti, Kamla Das, and Kamla Markandeya have written some of the path-breaking works that project how change was observed in their psyche and how they were looking at the new India. Exploring notions of boundaries, bodies, sexualities, these writers were negotiating their place in a new nation, still smarting from the fresh wound of partition. Placing selfhood above nationhood and convention, their books were defiant and progressive, inevitably drawing criticism. While some of these authors opposed violence through their words and characters, others tuned witnesses and truth-tellers about the sorry state of Indian women. Ishmat Chughtai's famous work, Lihaf, is known to almost all of us, and her persecution is of course well known. Other notable books that form a must-read list of feminist writing from India include Sobti's Mitro Marjani, Pritam's Pinjar, Mahashigadevi's Breast Stories, and Kamla Markandeya's Nectar in a Sieve. Readers must also note the new genre of radical feminist mythological fiction championed by writers like Pratibha Ray, Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni, Kavita Kane, and Anuja Chandramouli. This reclaiming of identities of mythical heroines will, one, hope and dislodge the submissive Sita and Savitri ideal of the woman in Indian mythology. Looking at the domain of Indian women writing, it is observed that not only women writers are projecting their concerns relating to culture, politics, region, tribe, but there's a constant search in them to locate and find out their identity, their voice, and establish it powerfully in society through the power of their written word. The need of the hour is to explore and evaluate the position of women who are coming from marginal spaces and are trying to establish their respective niche in the contemporary growing world. In the age of globalization and glocalization, it is pertinent to understand the positioning of women and realize the fact that their voice is indeed very imperative to shape the world of tomorrow. The present colloquium is an attempt to explore the various terrain of Indian women writing by keeping in view the regional, the tribal, and the folk domain. It will help us in knowing the various paradigms of these writings and will eventually lead to more exploration and knowledge that will further aid us in understanding more about these archetypes and life at large from women's perspective. Thank you. And now I pass on the mic to Shreya for conducting the program. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the lucid explanation on the theme. Next, we have our esteemed guest speaker, Dr. Shaista Irshad, Department of English, Iswar Saran PG College, University of Allahabad. She also has a teaching experience of more than 12 years at MNNIT Allahabad, having taught BA, MBA, BTech, BCA, MA, etc. She specializes in the area of gender studies. She has authored one book on gendered spaces, Women in the Novels of Margaret Atwood. She is also a bilingual poet and writer, writing in Urdu, Hindi, and English. Her stories and poems have been published in many anthologies and literary magazines of high repute. She recently published her first book of Hindi poetry, Ek Quatra Sukoon, and is currently working on her collection of short stories both in Hindi and English. She has also recently won 7th Bharat Award for Literature Short Story Contest 2021. Ma'am, I would love to request you to share some of your insights because we would love to hear and learn from you. Ma'am, please.
Thank you so much. I extend my heartiest thanks to Vasanta College, to the principal of this college, to Manjari and to Dr. Saurav for so warmly introducing me and for delivering the welcome address, and Shreya too, wonderful anchoring, my dear. It's very impressive, and I am sure that Dr. Manjari must have groomed you for this, right? So our best efforts lie in working with students, which is very, very important. And even we are struggling with these things. So I'm honored that I was invited by Dr. Manjari. She invited me last year as well, but things did not really work out. The entire world was in a kind of chaos, right? We were not able to understand how to move ahead. And I was, of course, in a very in utter state of depression. So here I am. I was destined to be with all of you. As Dr. Saurav said, that we are moving towards normalization. Students are coming to college. Our college is flooded with students again. And we can simply look forward to, retaining this normality that we have acquired from 14th Feb onwards. So as I discussed with Dr. Manjari, she said that we could talk about the women of the tribal society, right? So this topic seemed very interesting to me, and I thought that, of course, I can have my own exploration and research. So I just kept on picking up matter from here and there, locating books and journals. And the plight with the faculty or the students or scholars of humanities is that they're mostly stuck with the secondary data. I so wish when I was going through the entire work on tribal literature that was available, I truly have this feeling that what if we could go amongst those people and try to bring out the reality that exists there. So Shreya, can I share my screen, Bacha?
Sure, ma'am.
I needed to share my PPT. Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Yes.
It's not visible to me. How do I go ahead with the...
Didi, you just put this screen on a minimize and just open the PPT screen. Yes, now it is fine.
So I won't be able to see you all while I'm presenting.
Yes, you won't be able to see us, but we'll be able to see you.
So I just wonder the plight with the teachers of communication skills is that they want to see and talk. It's so difficult to look at the screen and then start. Anyway, since we have limited amount of time. So see, I have chosen the topic gender concerns in tribal women. I hope I'm properly audible because I'm not using headphone.
Yes, everything is fine. You can just
Fine. Okay. So gender concerns in tribal women unraveling Temsula Ao's These Hills Called Home. Stories from a War Zone. So dear all, I'd like to start with, of course, you cannot talk about women, you cannot talk about gender, you cannot talk about feminism, you cannot talk about tribal society unless you have had the background of what exactly the status of women is in the tribal society. So I would say that the kind of that I went through by collecting secondary data. So this is what I'm presenting is the brief analysis of what I have gone through. I think much remains to be explored. And before I go ahead, I would again try to tell this thing to you that most of the research is, still skeptical. You would find contradictory opinions and views and realities when you move from one tribe to another, from one community to another. And still people are lingering on this reality that what is the exact status of women in the tribal society. So I would say that the study of groups that came to be described as tribal studies began with the establishment of Asiatic Society of Bengal in the year 1874. And this was started by the colonial government, the British government. They started identifying the people that who all can be considered under the umbrella term of being a tribe. So they tried to identify tribes as those people who practiced animism, and this animism was later on considered as tribal religion. Now, what is animism? Animism is the practice of attributing, lifelike things to inanimate objects, to nature, to different things. They see life, they see supernatural power in everything that is associated with them. L.P. Vidyarthi was an anthropologist. He described the initial phase, the formation phase of tribal people in India that fell between 1874 to 1919 as the formative period, when people were being identified as falling under the category of tribes. The second phase that began from 1920 onwards till 1949 that was considered as constructive. An analytical phase started from 1950 onwards. So you see that initially people were being considered, categorized and identified as tribes. The research started, most of the research work that started on tribes, that started after when India gained independence, when India got free. And there was a flood of literature that started falling on this. So in the year 1978, the Indian Anthropological Society brought out a region-wide survey of tribal women. They were trying to locate exactly what the status was, right? So they started conducting survey, and this also started altogether at the same time when this subject, anthropological studies, was introduced into the universities of India. So research work started pouring in from all sides. The Indian Anthropological Survey was there. Then we had the Department of Sociology and Anthropological Studies and Research, tribal research institutes who were working on these areas and were trying to bring out the reality. You see, it's not very easy to bring out the reality of tribal people. You would never know what all is going on within the community, within the society that is considered as tribal. You need to go amongst them. You need to stay with them. They are initially reticent. They would not reveal the reality that is existing within the community. So you see that this survey pointed out that studies of women have either been ignored or when discussed, such discussions were rather hazy, they were brief, they were sketchy, they would not give you the correct idea of what exactly the status of women was. So there has been no consistency and uniformity, and you would get varied data in different kinds of societies, whether you talk of Jharkhand or NRI, the northeastern region, or when you go to any other place, right? When you go to Nagaland or any other the place where you find these communities. So some people say that tribal societies generally assigned high status to women. Others open that women's position in tribal society is the same as in other societies. So as Manjari introduced the topic in a very wonderful manner. So when we talk about feminism, we can still say that even though we have been through many, many years of this coinage of this word feminism that started in foreign countries. So this was considered as white feminism or European feminism. To what extent can we really identify this word feminism with the people or with the women or with the tribal women? Can we really introduce this word feminism to tribal women? Can we really identify women in the way that we have been looking at the women of foreign countries, the women of, the mainstream culture of India or any other place? So in today's society, after the introduction of the word postmodernism, we can very well say with a huge confidence that it's no more feminism, it is feminisms, right? Because identities have ceased to be stable. Identity is known to be plural. There is no single truth, as Friedrich Nietzsche says. He says that there are multiple truths. And when European feminism, or rather white feminism, tried to describe this category women from the lens of white feminism, it was retaliated from all countries and from all kinds of people. The first one were the people of black, these black people. So there emerged black feminism, then we have Indian feminism, then we have Dalit feminism, we have all kinds of isms associated with various communities. So can we really, at the end of the day, agree to this category of being woman, that these are the traits that are being possessed by women? No. There is no single definition, there is no universalization of being a woman. Each and every category has its own definition, and one must keep into mind the intersectionality that being a woman means different to different people. And then there was this conclusion somewhere that there are not as many differences between men and women as there are amongst men and women. So when the talk was going on about the status of women in the tribal society, the question began about defining this word status. How do we exactly look at the status of women? So when we talk about status, we have two ways of looking at the status of the tribal women. The first definition that can be coined for status is the roles and responsibilities and the duties of the women in the tribal society. And the second definition that can be attributed to this category of women from the perspective of tribal society is the honor, the prestige that is involved with these women. So you see, when we are trying to look at this term status of women from the perspective of tribal society, the lens that we have, the measurement that we have, the terminology that we have, the theory that we have is all European. Because when we talk about
Didi, you are not audible to us.
Can you now hear me?
Yes, now you are audible.
Okay, fine. Actually, there was some network error and my network collapsed. Fine. You can immediately let me know so that I can rectify it. Is my screen visible?
Right now it is not visible.
I'll have to share it again.
Yes, yes.
It's visible now.
Yes, now it is.
I hope I have not missed much when my voice went off. Okay, so let's take the example of Koraput, the status of women, how they are placed in the tribal society of Koraput. Now, the experience of the tribal women that stands absolutely in contrast with the mainstream experience. What we find there we find a happy blend of both patriarchy and matriarchy, leaving none as the oppressor or oppressed.
Didi, you are again inaudible.
I hope I'm audible now.
Yes, now you are audible.
I'm so sorry for the technical issues. This is happening today only. Okay. Is it visible now?
Yes, it is visible, Didi.
Thank you so much. So we see that the practices of the mainstream society, that is dowry system, that's not there in the tribal society. Instead, they have another practice which is known as bride price. And the groom has to pay an agreed amount to the bride's family when the marriage takes place. And this is believed to be the amount that they are trying to compensate the loss of the earning member of the family. As I already told you that both men and women, they both work together in the fields. There is equality. There is no division of labor that is present amongst these tribal societies. So this bride price practice is a kind of boon to the family of the bride, and they get some money when they wed off their daughter. So the cost of bride price sometimes, now of course, if anything is positive there in the society, you have to face the brunt and the challenges of that positive practice. So sometimes the cost of bride price sometimes hinders and discourages aspiring grooms from getting married to their desired ones. Now let's take the example of Banda tribe. There's this usually or customary practice that a Banda woman of age group 16 to 20 years, she can well get married to a boy of the age 12 to 14 years. And this is how a relatively mature woman who happens to be older than her spouse exercises control over the latter. Again, we would be shocked to see the kind of practice that's taking place in the tribal society, which is absolutely different from what we have in the mainstream society. So there, this practice takes place so that the woman is mature, she is able to take decisions, she is able to make opinions, she is able to get hold of the entire family and execute proper functioning of not only the entire field work plus her family as well. And it is believed that when she gets old, her husband, who matures later, can look after the family and after his wife as well. Therefore, it is the woman whose opinions get precedence over male members with regard to household matters. Among all tribes of Koraput, no discrimination is known to be made on the grounds of sex. This is another remarkable thing that we come across in the tribal society. People do not differentiate and discriminate on the grounds of sex. They would never say that if a girl child is there in the womb, we need to perform, like we need to kill the child, we need to destroy the fetus. No such practice was prevalent there. They accept and welcome the birth of both a male and a female child equally. No preference is attached to either of the sexes as non-tribals do in India. So I remember the comment of Sadat Hasan Mando, जो कि ये कहते हैं कि जो पहली खुशी हम अपनी बेटियों से छीन लेते हैं वो होती है उनकी पैदा होने की खुशी. So mainstream society, we see when we see the ratio of male and female, so people, they don't want females to be born in their families. But no such differentiation and distinction is visible amongst the tribals. Now, when you see it from the perspective of financially being dependent, in most of the tribes, both male and female members are economically self-dependent. Both of them go for work, both of them earn for their family. Therefore, male members' domination over women folk for their dependence is not found, as both enjoy approximately economic quality here. So I think the financial matters are one reason which makes the men superior and kind of look down upon women or marginalize women or subordinate them. Another practice that is observed there is both male and female consume country wine. There is neither taboo nor restriction that prohibits women from consuming liquor. And if in the mainstream society, when we see a woman either consuming liquor or alcohol or even smoking, we immediately start evaluating or judging her character. No such practice and belief is found in the tribal society. Then when you see the celebration of the festivals, we see that both male and females, they dance together, they keep their hands on each other, and they participate in the festivals together. right? Then there are self-help groups where women have equal opportunity in moving forward towards education. They are offered proper nutrition, proper food. They can, get themselves educated, and of course involved into many government activities that have been launched for their benefit. Then both sexes, they can propose to marry the candidate partner of his or her choice. The same attitude is taken in case of divorce. Although marriages are arranged mostly by negotiation, proposals could be entertained directly from the candidates too. So see what kind of privileges are available to these tribal women. With regard to their attitude towards divorce, it has been found that both the tribal male and female can go for it on equal terms. Their society is tolerant enough to permit this practice to be followed by either of the sexes. A tribal woman does not have the fear of social taboos relating to divorce, which you cannot think in the mainstream society. People say that a single woman cannot survive. If she claims to go for a divorce, probably she would be looked down by the society. Her survival would be at stake. But such practices and such perceptions are not there in tribe. Now, when I'm describing these things about different tribes, I'm not again trying to generalize. I'm not saying that this is happening amongst all the women of all the tribes. We have picked up examples, and on an average, we can talk about that mostly what kinds of practices are dominant in the tribal society. There are certain tribes where we see that patriarchy is altogether dominant and no such freedom and liberty and privileges can be associated with the women of tribal society. Now you see that before this, we have seen what all advantages and what all privileges a tribal woman is able to enjoy in the tribal society. Now, what kind of disadvantages have taken place along with the advantages? Because we cannot have all the goody things in any community. If anybody is, enjoying many liberties, then there must be something where the women are marginalized and they cannot have an equal say in many matters. So it does not mean that women in this society do not suffer from some male or socially imposed disadvantages. When we talk about the host community of Chota Nagpur, a girl has to wait till her mid-30s before she can find someone who can pay the bride price and become her partner in life. So as a result of which, there are many women who have to wait for long in order to get married. And if she passes her adulthood and if she never receives any proposal, then there is a practice of, getting her, or rather forcing her to get married to a plant. And her remarriage is performed like that of a widow. Then we have this, that women among them are treated because of this bride practice. Bride practice has its pros as well as cons. Because of this bride practice, anybody can pay the price and get a girl for marriage, which has rather triggered the proliferation of polygamous unions, because there are many wealthy men who can take on a number of wives simply by paying an agreed sum to the girl's family. Because of this, you see that, this bride price, this practice has been manipulated by the rich men who can use women as commodities, and then they can get married to any number of women they want simply by paying the agreed sum to the girl's family. Then you see that changes have been taking place everywhere. We have been talking about globalization. We have been talking about the changes in the modern world. We entered into modernity. Then we entered into post-modernity. So constant changes have been observed. Then how come we can say that this tribal society or tribal community has remained intact with no influence from the outside? Tribal society too has been viewed not as static, but again in the process of change. Of these, the tradition that has been dominant has been one that has focused on change from tribe to caste transformation of tribes into caste, and they are being forced to convert. They are being, served with such circumstances that where they have no other option other to get converted into either Hinduization or Christianity. They either get converted into Hindus or into Christians. They have not only moved in one direction of Hinduism and the Hindu way of life, there has been an equal movement towards Christianity. Here I would like to add one thing, that while discussing these about the tribal society and tribal women with one of my colleagues who is, dealing with a huge project on tribal society, because he's the one who's been moving amongst the tribe, he's been interacting with the tribal people. When I asked him that what about the conversion of these tribal people into Hindus or into Christianity, he said that there is no conversion into Hindus. They're already Hindus. The mass conversion has been towards Christianity. Right? And then he also added one thing, that again, the situation or the position or the status of tribal women is far, far better when we compare them with the women of the mainstream culture. So this Sanskarization has taken place, a culturalization has taken place, which means that these tribal people are adopting the values, the culture, the understanding, the modernity of the mainstream society. They cannot remain isolated for long. And the reasons are many. You see that the urban nation, the urban people, the non-tribal people, they have been constantly moving towards the jungles, the indigenous culture of the people. There has been a kind of blurring of the boundary between the tribal region and the non-tribal region. So their space has been, attacked. It has been invaded. They can no more stay with the nature according to their own freedom, whim, and fantasy. Their space has been invaded. Their culture has been invaded. Their identity has been compromised. Their language has been compromised. So there has been this blurring of boundaries between the non-tribal and the tribal region. So they, by choice or by force, they are into mingling with the main culture. They are trying to, get blended with the modern concept of the living. So Sanskarization, of course, it has, again, its pros and cons. It opened up the space for tribal women to participate. Now, when they were getting converted into Christianity, so the benefit was it opened up the space for tribal women to participate in religious worship side by side with men, a practice which was denied to many tribal women in many communities where they could not participate in these religious traditions of many tribal societies. Then in a number of Protestant denominations, they have been appointed deaconesses, preachers, and trustees. They are entrusted with the responsibility of carrying out social, religious, welfare activities in the society. So these are the advantages that they have got by getting converted to Christianity or by imbibing the values of Sanskarization or merging with the civilization that has been moving forward. Christianity has also made modern education accessible to women in tribal societies. So one way through which women could ever imagine to update themselves or rather get educated by imbibing the modern education was through the concept of getting baptized into Christianity. Now, what are the disadvantages of merging with the civilization, of getting acculturated with the mainstream society? The advantages can be counted here that a variety of restrictions in the name of ethics and laws of the church, which go against the kind of freedom that tribal women enjoy in their traditional social setup. So initially, women were better placed. But since they got baptized into Christianity, there were many things that they were deprived of. And in the names of ethics and laws, many women had to suffer with the curbing of their freedom and the privilege that initially was their part and parcel of their life. Then again, it also set in motion a process of segregation between boys and girls. Initially, we saw that there was no distinction or no demarcation between the sexes of the children. Boy and girl both were equal. But this Sanskarization process that introduced this difference between boys and girls into the understanding and psyche of the tribal people. Then, after getting acculturated, these women, they stopped having access to getting free divorce from their partners. This put a stop to divorce that had been easy to work out according to customary tribal laws. So they were kind of tied into the relationship with their life partners, and divorce was not easy. Most importantly, gender inequality inherent in the Christian churches and denominations continued. So you see that here, can we really give this a statement that the primitive society was the most advanced society, these primitive people, which are labeled as savage, The setup that they had initially was that there was no demarcation between men and women. There was no division of labor. Boys and girls were equal, no segregation of sexes. But after they got into, merged with the civilization, into the modern era, into things that are considered as modern according to the mainstream culture, these things taught that there is gender inequality inherent in the Christian churches and denominations. They further continued. Both Hinduization and Christianization thus led to a number of restrictions on the kinds of freedom that tribal women traditionally enjoyed. So you see that how things are being compromised, how their freedom is being compromised, how the understanding of gender and feminism is emerging out here. Initially, it was found that more than 80% men were feminist. But after they started moving towards civilization, moving towards non-tribal people, adopting the values that were provided to them by this, getting baptized into different religions. I mean, most prominently, this most prominent one is Christianity. They had to compromise with this gender equality. Now, having said all this, I would, before I start with Temsola Au's short story collection, I would like to say that when we talk about the status of women in the tribal society, we can still say that they have been better placed. They enjoyed more freedom. They had more say in the family matters. They could work equally in terms with their male partners in the fields. There was no demarcation. There was no distinction between the gender of boy and girl. Right? But as we are moving ahead, as we are moving towards modernization, as we are progressing, as changes are taking place, as tribal societies are being invaded by non-tribal people because of the scarcity of land, because of the scarcity of resources. And then these tribal people also, they are not able to, confine themselves into the region that initially was their haven. Even they are moving out because of the disruption and the devastation of natural resources with which they survive. The scarcity of wood, there's the scarcity of food, the scarcity of fodder for animals. So even they have to move towards urban societies for their survival. So the changes have been taking place, and with these changes, we have observed that women's position has been compromised in the tribal society. Now people have the lens of this modern society, and many men who got white-collar jobs later on, they felt that, I mean, they are of the opinion that the women that they marry, the wives that they have, should be confined into the limits of the home. And this concept, this thing is a kind of a privilege for those people. So there have been various stories. And when I read Professor Temsola Au, when I read her short story collection, I would rather say that, of course, we can very much witness the position of women being compromised. She has been exploited on the grounds of her sex. She has been treated as sexual commodity. But at the same time, I have seen that women, they never give up. They stand strong. And in many of the short stories, they emerge stronger than their male counterparts. They are no more compromised with they are no more shown to be compromising with their strength, with their belief, with the power that they have as an individual. So most of the women characters, they outshine their male counterparts. So this gender thing, that our genders are constructed and it's not our biology that is going to dictate what way we are going to behave, proves to be true. We have seen that many a times women are transcending the stereotypes that have been associated so far, with men and women separately. Women, of course, they dominate the stories of Professor Temsola, but at the same time, we have observed that they are also looked as sexual commodities, a thing to be consumed. And these women, they are, not much dominated by the males of their community than they are dominated by the males of the non-tribal region. You see, when I begin with the story, I would certainly like to add the political issues that have been intact with the region of Nagaland and Indian armed forces have made a huge difference in the image and the picture of women that comes before us. So let me tell you briefly about Professor Temsola. She was born in 1945 in Assam, and she is a celebrated Naga poet. She not only writes short stories, she is a poet also and an ethnographer. And she is widely respected as one of the major literary voices in English from Northeast India. She's also won Padma Shri Award. And then in her short stories, we find myths associated with Nagas. We get to know about the folk tales, folklore, the rituals. The indigenous culture comes forward, it comes alive, the customs and belief systems. So she has penned down so far 2 short stories. The first one is These Hills Called Home, and the second one is Laburnum from My Hair. So of course, there are so many stories I simply picked up in order to validate my point about the kind of women characters this writer uses. I picked up 3 short stories, right? So these stories, Temsula is basically describing about the life, the culture, the folk tales, the myths, and all of the Naga society. And Naga society has a long history of suffering, has a long duration of suffering where they have endured bloodshed during the emergency period. You see that this Nagaland region has been into constant strife with the Indian government. They have been fighting for freedom. They wanted an independent state for themselves, and this fight still continues. It started in 1958, and the fight is still continuing, because of which these people of the tribal region, they have been suffering enormously. Their sufferings have not come to an end, and dehumiliating, kind of demolishing women, humiliating women, harassing them, sexually molesting them, raping them, killing them. This has been the part and parcel of the women of the Naga society. There has been constant violence throughout. The violence affected all. It impacted the traditional life of the Naga people. And both the genders were influenced simultaneously. So the study that I have chosen, it focuses on the impact of the war on the women folk and their voices that marked the Naga history of the northeastern region of India. The women voices can be heard protesting the exploitation and torture in their own way. So I have picked up 3 stories: The Jungle Mare, The Last Song, and The Curfew Man. And here we get ample examples where women are caught in the cycle of violence and still they are standing strong. They emerge strong. They're never shown to be weak or giving up. Even they are the ones who are protecting their men folk as well. They stand aloof. They stand above the crowd. They stand above the entire village. So women characters, they surpass all when it comes to them to save their life, the integrity of the villagers. So, of course, I already told you that the history of Nagaland is full of political turmoil, violence, and bloodshed. The conflict between Naga rebels and Indian armed forces led to great loss of innocent lives and properties in England. What happened in 1958, that Indian government introduced, this Armed Forces Special Power Act. Under this act, the Indian army had this unquestioned authority and right to kill anybody on mere suspicion. Because of this, the conditions of this Naga society have continuously deteriorated. They have been killed, destroyed. Various practices are being followed over there. So the first story is Jungle Major. Here we get that there is a feminine overpowering of the male in wit, resulting in a genuine and healthy domestic life of a Naga. Years later, the real there are 2 characters here. There are husband and wife, Punaba and Khatila. Punaba is the husband and Khatila is the wife. Punaba is comparatively ugly, or rather very ugly when compared with his beautiful wife. So I told you that in the Naga society, because they have been constantly struggling to, liberate their Nagaland society, they wanted an isolated land, a different separate state. So they have been struggling. So there are 2 parties, or rather 2 groups. One is Indian Armed Force and the indigenous people of the Nagaland society, who are in a constant revolt, And in order to fight for their rights, they have created a space for themselves that is known as underground people. So there is a strife between the underground people and the above ground people. Underground people consist of the people, the representatives of the Naga society who have been fighting for their freedom, and then Indian Armed Force. So Punaba too, of course, these husband and wife, they have been living a happy life, but Punaba joins the underground force in order to fight for the liberation of his entire Naga society. So these underground people, they have to remain hidden because the Indian armed forces, they have their informers, they have their spies, and if they get to know anyhow that Punaba is involved with the underground force, he would be killed anytime. But since Punaba has a family, he has a wife who's very beautiful, and he often keeps on coming from underground, above ground, to meet his wife. So once he comes and joins Khatila, his wife, and he stays overnight with his wife. And somehow the informers inform Indian armed forces that Punaba is staying in this particular house. Now the Indian armed forces, they come and they knock on the door, and the condition at the time becomes very critical. It was guaranteed at that moment that Punaba would be killed. Nobody would be able to save him. And once it is confirmed that Punaba is an underground man, and once he is caught, the entire village would be suffering the brunt, the anger of the Indian armed forces. Not only the entire village would be burnt, their grains would be destroyed, women's would be raped, anybody would be shot anytime. So it would mean death for the entire village. So here, that's a small hut where both husband and wife are standing, and they are so scared that there are representatives of the Indian armed forces on the door. So there we see that Khatila acts in a very intelligible manner. She has a great wit and understanding. She creates a ploy, and because of her wit and understanding, she is able to save not only her husband, but she is able to save the entire village. She immediately asks her husband to remove his clothes, and she bundles up the cloth and throws it out where a representative of the underground is standing, and he simply disappears with his clothes. And then she smears the ash on the face of her husband, and when the door is open, she immediately starts shouting on him that you simply don't do anything, go and fetch water for me. And she's so authoritative and assertive in her command that those people, those army people, they are not able to at all think that this is the man who's the representative of the underground force of Naga society. So this way, because of her being, cunningness, because of her she's able to keep her senses intact, because of which she's able to save the entire village from the anger and the brunt of the Indian armed forces. So this is how I told you that this character Khatila, she emerges victorious. And then while she's trying to hide her husband in her home, she is constantly threatened by the army that if she is found, this is confirmed that she has been trying to save people from the underground, she will have to suffer the brunt, and that straight away meant that she would be raped and then killed further. Second story is the last song, where we have the story of a young girl, Apenyo. She was a wonderful singer. She had a beautiful voice. Her father is not there. Her father died when she was very young. In fact, when she was a child, just a year old. And her mother is there. Her name is Lebani. So this story has been inspired from a real life incident, This straight away reflects the story that has already taken place in the year 2004, when the Assam Rifle, they attacked the Mokokchung state, and the Indian armed force, they destroyed the entire village. They opened fire on the entire village, burnt the church. Many people died. The many people died alive. They were burnt alive in the churches, and women were raped. There was a mass gang rape of these women, right? So there was an event that is going on in the village of the story in which the story takes place, and all the villagers, they are very happy about it. A new church is being erected beside the old church, and there is the ceremony of this new church being dedicated, and all the village people, they are celebrating this dedication of the church as a festival. Everybody has new clothes. They are wearing their best clothes. They have practiced a beautiful song, and Apenyo is going to lead that song. And they all have assembled. But this Indian army, they get to know that the village people have been funding the underground military resources. When they get to know, they simply take it this way that we are, of course, going to teach a lesson to the village people that how dare they challenge the government, how dare they deceive the government and fund the underground resources. So they simply come to the location where this new church is being dedicated. The song is going on. Apenio is singing there on the full bloom of her voice. And these people attack. They start firing on the people randomly. When Apenio sees that Indian armed forces arrived and they are firing bluntly on everybody, she starts singing in a very high-pitched tone. This captain, Apenio, challenging these army people by singing a song. When they see her courage, they are no more able to endure this. They pull her and they gang rape her. As a result of this, she dies. And when her mother tries to save her daughter, she too is kicked and raped, and she too dies. The bodies of these two women are pushed into the old church, and the entire church is put on fire. So again, we see the kind of courage these two women depict, the Apenio and her mother Lebani. These two women, even at the moment, at the junction when these army people are firing, they are, firing openly on the people, and the people are dying like anything. These two women, they still kept on singing and trying to exert the pressure and the force and the identity or the courage that they had. Now, the third story that I have is of the Curfew Man. It is about, again, husband and wife. Husband's name is Sitamba, and this wife's name is Jemtila. So Sitamba, this is about the society when the curfews used to be there during the night in order to curb the insurgency. The underground people, they were constantly active and they were fighting for the freedom. So Indian army, they tried to impose the night curfew, which was a big trouble for the people who stayed there, the town people. They were not allowed to move at night. And even in case of emergencies, they were not allowed to move. As a result, sometimes this thing proved fatal as well. So this man is there, Sitamba, who was initially in the army, but he was not hired there. He was in police. He was in Assam police, but he wasn't hired on account of his merit. He was hired because he was a very good football player. But once while playing the football, he got injured and his knee was destroyed, as a result of which he was given an early retirement. Now, when given an early retirement, these two, husband and wife, they feel that they are no more able to survive with the meager amount that they get as a pension. So Jemtila decides to work as a domestic help. And then she is hired by the wife of the SDO. She's expecting and she wants a house help. And Jemtila joins and she starts working there. And when Jemtila's husband, when he meets Sitamba, he feels that Sitamba can act as an informer for him, as a government informer, and try to give him news regarding the underground people, about their actions, about their plans. So Sitamba joins the army because he feels that his wife has got the job and he's not working. So his male ego pricks him. His male ego tortures him, and in order to curb his male pride, he joins the job of acting as a government informer against his own people. But later on, because of the intelligence or understanding or wit of his wife, he's saved of this trouble. She's able to save him, and then they both are able to live happily. So of all the three stories that I have picked up, I have shown that how women are empowered in the story by Tensula, and they prove to be, more strong and comparatively, very much assertive and dominating when compared with their male counterparts. So this is where I finished. There is much, much more that is left because such a huge topic cannot be concluded in such a short span of time. So still I tried to do justice by covering up the history first, and then trying to give you a glimpse of what kinds of writings are available on tribal literature. So if you have any questions, I can take that up. But before I wind up, I'll certainly like to add two, three things which are very essential right now. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am, for the insightful talk. If there are any questions, you can type in the chat box. So, ma'am, you started off with the different types of feminism, because feminism on is like a blanket statement, but inside that we definitely have many layers of feminism. Because of feminism for a tribal woman is definitely different for a white Western woman. So, ma'am, we definitely find the intersectionality, and that is very much appropriate to the pluralism that of the postmodern world. And from ma'am, from there on, you went on to give us a detailed analysis of the tribal women, of their lives. And from them, ma'am, you went on to give us a beautiful explanation of the empowered woman of the Tenshula story. So, ma'am, we find that how the tribal women, amidst all the coercion and the brutalities, they still hold on to their strength, and they are still resistant to the external forces, and they still strive to live their lives. So, ma'am, thank you for such a beautiful, beautiful talk. It was really wonderful to hear from you, ma'am. And if we have any questions, please type in the chat box.
I was certainly expecting questions, and because I was trying to research this topic, of course, research would mean that you go amongst the tribe and try to find out the reality, because things are still hazy, right?
Actually, with these examples that you have shared in your PPT, the students and all of us have got material to actually do the research.
Yes.
So I think that is one reason that the students at this point, they are not having questions, but maybe...
Of course, I understand this. And Manjari, I would certainly like to share 2-3 things with my students. I mean, your students, my students.
Sure, please.
When I developed interest in tribal literature, I tried to go through there was one woman whose name is Rajni Murmu. You can search her on Facebook. And recently she has been sharing the reality of the indigenous culture, the reality of women in the tribal society, which is indeed very shocking, because so far we have known that women are better placed, they are enjoying more privileges. But she has described many practices which are kind of, they would send shivers down your spine, right? The kind of practices that, like the one example is of witch hunting. Usually women are the target of witch hunting, and they are constructed to be witch so that their property can be grabbed by the people. Another practice is which she recently shared was of Sohrai Dance. There's the Sohrai festival where women and men, they both dance together, and boys have been taking this as an opportunity to molest women. So she tried to raise her voice, because of which she has been trolled badly. She has been trying to give many examples about the bad practices, the malpractice of the tribal society. So which is very, very shocking indeed. So a lot more needs to be researched and discovered, because we simply have secondary data that keeps on transforming from one research paper to another. So reality is yet to be known. So my research is still left. I've simply tried to compile the data and pick it up from here and there. So of course, I would encourage my students to go for primary research, not base your research on secondary data. Go for primary data. And this is the need of the hour, because feminism is not complete, women empowerment is not complete unless these women, the issues of these women is assimilated into our understanding of feminism, right?
Yes, Shreya, you can do a thank you, and I request everyone to switch on their camera, keep a smile on your face. By the time Shreya is giving the vote of thanks, I'll take a group picture. Yes, over to you, Shreya.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Saista, ma'am. Actually, you took out time from your busy schedule to spend time with us, to share your insight with us. So a big thank you to you. And I would also like to thank our principal, ma'am, Professor Alka Singh. She is a visionary, and thank you, ma'am, for gifting us these plethora of wonderful opportunities to actually learn from such intellectuals and dignitaries. I would also like to express my immense gratitude to our teachers, starting from our HOD ma'am, Professor Manjari Chunchinwala, Dr. Sunita ma'am, Dr. Manjari Shukla ma'am, Dr. Saurabh Singh sir, Dr. Rachana Pandey, because it is because of you, our teachers, that these kind of events turn out to be a reality for us. Thank you for putting so much consistent efforts for bringing the best for your students, and we really feel fortunate to be your students. And with this, I would also like to extend my gratitude to all the active participants, because your participation with so much enthusiasm actually matters. With this, I would also wish you the best and looking forward to your talks. Thank you so much.
And I would like that Alkadi please share something.
First of all, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm so sorry, an unexpected meeting came up which I needed to attend. So I was not there to see the initial part of your program. But I am glad, and I was really looking forward to this colloquium because this gives us an insight into, what our students are doing and how far are they taking interest in what we are doing for them. So it's a kind of examination for us as teachers to be able to understand and evaluate ourselves. We are not here to evaluate you. We are here to evaluate ourselves. And colloquium was initially one forum with which we started, and I thought this is a beautiful forum to tell us and help us to analyze ourselves. So thank you so much, and God bless you all the participants who have joined the program from all the colleges. A very warm welcome from the college, and we hope that this will continue in times to come, because this is one platform where we can see an intermingling of the students from different colleges, and each one, the minute we broaden our horizon of understanding through listening to others differently, it all helps us to learn and grow. So on this note, God bless you. All the best to all the students who will be reading their papers for this forum, and I will definitely be listening to you. That's for sure. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Didi. Thank you. Yes, Shreya, now over to you. You can live.
To you for sparing your valuable time to be with my children, my students, and of course, a word of gratitude to Manjari, Dr. Manjari Shukla, who was very enthusiastically behind this entire forum that we have created. So thank you for being with us, and hope to see you very soon in the college premises.
Thank you, ma'am. Absolutely my pleasure. It was wonderful connecting with you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, carry on, Shreya. Sorry for interrupting.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Good afternoon, one and all present here. First of all, I would like to give my heartiest gratitude for giving me the opportunity of hosting the second session of the 6th Students Colloquium organized by Department of English, Vasanta College for Women. As the topic of today's event is a remarkable one, women's writing in India, reconnoitring the folk, regional and tribal domains. I would like to begin by a quote of Anne Frank. I quote, "I can shake off everything as I write. My sorrows disappear and my courage is reborn." Unquote. Now, I would like to call the participants one by one to present their papers and enlighten us with their creativity and knowledge. Before that, I would like to give a gentle reminder that each participant will be given 5 plus 2 minutes for the presentation. So without further ado, let's begin with our first participant. So our first participant is Astha Kumari, MA Final, Vasanta College for Women. Astha?
Good morning. This is Astha of MA Final from Vasanta College. The title of my paper is Breaking the Stereotypes, 3 Women by Temsula Au. Temsula Au is a poet, short story writer, and ethnographer from Nagaland. This story is taken from a famous short story collection, Laburnum for My Head, for which she received the Honorary Sahitya Academy Award in 2013. Laburnum for My Head was published in 2009, and it is a collection of 8 short stories which talks about the lives of people from the vibrant and troubled region of Nagaland in northeast India. A brief storyline. This story is about three women belonging to three different generations sharing their life experiences. These three women are Martha, the little girl, Medelma, her mother, and Lipoptula, her grandmother. Martha is adopted by Medelma. She is unmarried, and after the adoption, she becomes a single unmarried mother. Martha is bullied by her friends because of her skin color and strange features, but Medelma and Lipoptula's explanation about these incidents comforts her. One day at school, Martha gets to know why she was called Coolie by her friends. It was that time when she gets to know about her adoption. When Martha was born at the hospital, her mother died and her father left the baby, saying, I quote from the text, what will I do with another girl? Do whatever you want. I don't want to see her ever. She who killed my wife. Unquote. At this hospital, Medelma worked as resident nurse. This is how she gets to know about Martha. And finally, she decides to adopt Martha. Next, we see the tragic past of Lipoptula. She was raped by Merin Shashi. He was a member of the village council, and Medelma was his child. This dark past of Lipoptula was kept away from everyone as she thought that nobody will know and decided to take the pain to the grave. Next, breaking the stereotypes. Medelma is a working woman who even feeds her family, breaking the society's stereotypical notion that women cannot be breadwinner. Medelma decided not to marry but still wanted to adopt the child. Thus, she became an unmarried single mother despite of all the oddities. Martha was bullied by her friends, but she willed to live for those who loved her. Next, it shows how people despise girl child, but the three women's extraordinary life abandons such thinking of people. At last, to conclude, I would like to say that this story gives a very strong message of feminism and women power. Although there are a lot of different notions about women, their life, and capabilities, but nowadays, even girls living in tribal regions work hard on establishing their own identity and building a life on their own terms and conditions, not following the stereotypical notions of society. Thus, this paper throws light on many such insights from the text Three Women by Temsula Au. Thank you.
Thank you, Astha, for such an amazing presentation. The next participant is Dishani Mukherjee, MA Previous, Vasanta College for Women. Dishani.
Good afternoon, respected teachers and my dear batchmates and senior. I am Dishani Mukherjee from MA Previous. The topic that I have chosen is portrayal of tribal women in Indian English writing. For this, I have chosen 3 short stories written by Mahashigadevi. These stories were originally written in Bengali. Later, the famous post-colonial critic Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak translated into English. I would like to give a brief introduction about Mahashigadevi. She was born and brought up in West Bengal. She was well acquainted with the challenges and problems of the marginalized woman whose voice was still unexplored. She used to travel to the remote places of India where tribal men and women face challenges every day. The first story that I have mentioned in my paper is Draupadi. We all know that Draupadi is a mythical figure in the epic Mahabharata. She was dependent on Lord Krishna to save her from cruel Duryodhana. But Devi has reconstructed the character of Draupadi. Devi's Draupadi, is a daring tribal figure who speaks for her right. She is not afraid of patriarchy. She is in quest for transcending her tribal status. The second story that I would like to mention is Behind the Bodies. Behind the Bodies is inspired from the famous Bollywood song Choli ke Piche Kya Hai. Here we meet two characters, upper class man Wupin, who is a photographer, and a tribal woman Gangur. Upin was attracted to the beauty of Gangur's chest. He takes a photograph of her chest and sees village and tribal culture. The third and final story that I have mentioned is Dolti the Bountiful. This story reveals how the upper class masters ride the fate of marginalized people. Dolti is a 14 years old girl. She is pushed to the hellish world of prostitution by her master. On the day of 15th August 1947, she dies. Here, Devi is focusing on the fact that we are not still independent without having class, caste, and gender issues in our society. The innocent tribal girl, Dolti, writes a story of misery and exploitation over the independent map of India. Here, Devi also wants to draw the fact that our India, though is secular, democratic, but still we have not get original democracy and secularism. Every character of Mahashigadevi is focus is fear. Every character of Mahashigadevi is taken from the tribal domain. Their suffering has been portrayed very vividly in her writing. Mahashita Devi's writing is very symbolic, where she has portrayed the sufferings of tribal culture. Devi's writing, no doubt, Devi's writing is a celebration of womanhood. She was a spirit who worked day and night for the upliftment of tribal men and women. It seems that not only tribals but also each and every woman from each section finds liberty.
Excuse me,
for
Dishani. Please wind up. You have 2 minutes left.
Yes, this is what I wanted to share about my paper. Nothing else left.
Okay, are you done?
Yes, I'm done.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dishani, for such a remarkable presentation. The next participant is Trisha Khatua, MA Previous, Vasanta College for Women.
Good morning, respected teachers, respected seniors, and my fellow batchmates. I'm Trisha Khatua. I'm from MA Previous, Vasanta College for Women, and today I'm going to present a paper where I compare three authors from three different women's perspective. Namely, well, is my screen visible, by the way? Can anyone please help me?
No.
Okay. I don't know if I can do this. I think I might. Okay, yes, I think it is visible right now. Is it?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes, now it is.
Thank you. Yes. So as I was saying, my paper explores the narration of three distinct authors, namely Binodi Nidashi, Shantabai Kamble, and Shashi Deshpande. The angle through which I have tried to show the way women are marginalized is something I have realized while reading the papers, is that it's not that a woman who is marginalized as a Brahmin will be marginalized in the same degree as a Dalit woman. So, realizing all these things, I thought that it would be perhaps a good idea to show the various narratives through different angles. So, the aim of this paper is to demonstrate exclusion and marginalization of women, which is a constant act irrespective of a social standing. And the three authors that I have considered, the first two are autobiographies. So, Binodi Dashi, who is also known as Noti Binodini, happens to be one of the earliest Bengali theatre actresses in a time when Kolkata was still colonial and theatre was emerging out as a important medium both in the world of arts and as an outlet of nationalism. Whereas Shantabai Kamble, born in 1923 as a Dalit and also as the, well, untouchable Mahar woman, is considered to be the first Dalit woman writer who wrote her autobiography. And she's also considered to be the first Dalit woman teacher in her district in Sholapur. Shashi Deshpande, whereas, is a renowned mainstream author. Unlike the other two who are quite regional, Shashi Deshpande's works are quite well known. However, and the women in Deshpande's works are usually modern, cosmopolitan. They're well versed with the outer world. However, they're not free from the shackles of patriarchy. I have tried to explore these themes in two of the novels, The Dark Holds No Terror and the Sahitya Academy winner, That Long Silence. So when we first go to the autobiography of Binodini Dashi, namely she has two works, Amar Kotha and Amar Obhinotri Jivan. She was born in what can be considered to be a prostitute quarter, and like her family was quite destitute, and at the tender age of 10 or around 11, she was selected to be an actress in the world of theater. Now we have to mind this in mind that like her world was contrasted with the world of the respectable woman class, the Bhadra Mahila, who were well educated and who also wrote autobiographies, also known as Smriti Kotha, which followed the conventional traditional system. However, Binodini hailed from, well, a very marginalized background, and for that reason only she could be an actress. Had she been in the Bhadra Mahila Samaj, she could not have had the opportunity to be one because it would be considered improper. And to her name, she has a lot of plays. She has participated in spiritual plays like Nimai Shonnash. She has also participated in nationalistic plays like Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay's Durgesh Nandini, where she played double roles, both as Aisha and Tilottama.
Excuse me, Trisha, please wind up. You have 4 minutes left.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, in case of Shantabai Kamble, her autobiography is called Maja Janmachi Chitrakatha. In English, it is translated to A Kaleidoscopic Story of My Life. And throughout the autobiography, she explores herself and her identity, which is doubly marginalized, both as an untouchable, as in a Dalit, and also as a woman. There are instances where she was not allowed to enter the temple of God Vitoba because she was an untouchable, but she was also discriminated because she being a girl in an otherwise male-dominated class, she was asked by her teacher to change school in Pandharpur. In case of Shashi Deshpande's works, in The Dark Holds No Terror, Sarita is a doctor, but she is unable to free herself from the shackles of patriarchy. She marries Manohar, who hails from a lower caste, But Manohar is not someone who gives her a healthy relationship and gets violent when he sees that he's successful. I mean, she's successful, but he is not. And Sarita is disappointed in her marriage. Whereas Jaya initially is a very docile woman, but later on, when Mohan, her husband, loses his job and things get on her side to handle, she tries to explore her identity, and including the even now taboo topic of the woman exploring her romantic side outside marriage, like she did in case when she met Kamat. Uh, I would just conclude, since I already took a lot of time, is that throughout the various stages that we explore in women's writing, we have seen that women do not face similar circumstances. Shantabai Kamble experienced discrimination as a Dalit, while Binodini experienced discrimination as a person who hailed from a prostitute background. Whereas the characters of Shashi Deshpande's novels do not face any of that because they hail from a cosmopolitan background, but still they're restricted in their own worlds. In such a circumstances where throughout centuries women's writings have been, women's voices have been silenced, women's writings become not only an important tool but also an act of resistance. However, there are also complexes, like Deshpande pointed out, that the separate categorization of women's writing itself becomes a problem, since male writers are never separately categorized. But the dilemma lies in the fact that women's voices have been so subdued that a certain categorization is required. Finally, I would like to conclude my presentation with a quote from French feminist Hélène Cixous, who has famously said in her essay, The Laugh of Medusa, that woman must write herself, must write about women and bring women to writing, from which they have driven away as violently as from their bodies. Thank you.
Thank you, Trisha, for this incredible presentation. I would request all the participants to pay a little attention to the time limit. Our next participant is Prachi Mishra, MA Previous, Vasanta College for Women. Prachi?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Prachi Mishra from Vasanta College of Women, pursuing my MA first year from here. And today here I am to talk to you about immigrant suffering and self-realization in Bharti Mukherjee's novel. Now I am going to start my presentation. Please let me know that if it is visible.
Yes, it is.
Women's writing in India, reconnoitring the folk, regional and tribal domains. For my research paper, I have chosen an American, Canadian, Indian woman writer, Bharti Mukherjee. Bharti Mukherjee's introduction. Bharti Mukherjee was an Indian, American, Canadian writer and professor emerita in the Department of English at the University of California, Berkeley. She was the author of a number of novels and short story collection, as well as works of non-fiction. Mukherjee's work features not only cultural clashes, but undercurrents of violence. She delineated in her writing the culture changes and alienation in the immigrant experience. Now looking forward to Bharti Mukherjee's works. Her first novel, The Tiger's Daughter, 1972, tells of a sheltered Indian woman shocked by her immersion in American culture and on her return to India by a changed Calcutta. Her most notable work is considered to be Jasmine, which was set in 1980s, is about a young Indian woman in the United States who trying to adapt to the American way of life in order to be able to survive, and also took many changed identities. Through her novels, Bharti Mukherjee has depicted her own experience of dislocation and displacement. Mukherjee later works include Wanting America, Selected Story, 1995, Leave It to Me, 1997, Wife, Jasmine, The Holder of the World, Darkness, The Middleman and Other Stories, Days and Nights in Calcutta, The Sorrow and the Terror, and many other notable works. Now looking forward to Bharati Mukherjee's subject. Her subjects were post-colonial Anglophone fiction, Asian American fiction, autobiographical narratives, American culture, immigration history, fiction writing, autobiography writing. Her genre include novels, short stories, essays, travel literature, journalism. Awards she got: 1988 National Book Critics Circle Award for The Middleman and Other Stories, Canada Arts Council Grant 1973, Pushcart Prize 1999. Now, the main aim of this research paper. In the social structure of the world, women were expected to focus on practical domestic pursuits and activities that encouraged the betterment of their families only, and more particularly their husbands. In most cases, education for women was not advocated. It was thought to be detrimental to the traditional female virtues of innocence and morality. Women who speak out against the patriarchal system of gender roles or any injustice ran the risk of being exiled from their communities or worse. Unmarried women, in particular, were the targets of witch hunt. Because of this, gender inequality and somewhat non-uniform social hierarchy, male and female, in spite of becoming two individuals, have been cast as two different cultural beings, having utterly different life experience. In this reference, the comments of a great writer, Simone de Beauvoir, throws light on the condition of the fairer sex in the society. Female sexuality is not seen as a personal or private matter, but a family concern, whether it is marriage, education, or any other activity associated with their lives. The purpose of this paper is to admire Bharati Mukherjee's spirit of celebration of strength of women. It is also an attempt to have a deep insight into the life of the protagonist of the novel. The author's aim is to observe, examine, and present the existing position of women and the problems they face, both in India and abroad. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for giving me this golden opportunity to speak up. Any suggestions or queries related to my presentation is most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Prachi, for such a wonderful presentation. Our next participant is Shivshendu Chakraborty, MA Final, DAB PG College. Shivshendu, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I would like to present my screen. Is my screen visible?
No, it is not.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is. Yes, Shivchandra, you are not audible.
Actually, I am unable to connect my presentation due to some technical glitch here.
Yes, Shivchandra, you can proceed without your presentation.
Okay. Okay, I shall proceed with my presentation. Okay, I shall proceed without my presentation. So my paper, I am Shusha Master. So I would like to start with a basic introduction about my paper. So as we know about Mahabharata, Mahabharata is the great epic of Bharata dynasty, which is a very integral part of our culture. Like our culture has evolved through epics and moral retelling of the stories. It is considered as a text of moral law as well as history, that is itihasa. Itihasa stands for something that has actually happened. So it documents the evolution and the political power shifting between 400 BC to 200 BC, and it was written by Ved Vyasa, who is also known as Krishna Dwapana. And a very interesting thing about this epics in our culture is this: the writers of our epic, the original writers of our epic, are actually the part of the epic. So basically, Ved Vyasa is the biological father of Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidur from Maharashtra. And Mahabharata. And Mahabharata is basically the largest epic poem ever written. It consists of around 1.8 million words, and it has immense influence. It has several cultural influence, like it has influenced painting in entire India and South Asia. Painting, architecture, literature, drama, music, religion, and of course nationalism. Like before British came to India, the idea of an united India didn't exist. There were people with different principalities, but they were connected. They were connected through the idea of Bharat, through these texts. One thing is very interesting about this epics, like these epics have several cultural influences, and they are mostly handled by male writers, which leads to a misrepresentation of women in the epic. These epics are very much seen as a stock book of characters. These characters in the epic, they define the actual work of a person in the society. They actually define the moral dharma and what is right to do, righteous thing to do. So misrepresentation of woman character in our epics had been very significant because they were mostly handled by male writer, and we see a constant sense of phallocentrism in our epics. These epics have carved the social status and social space for women in our society, and women are mostly depicted as a thing of masculine community value. They are not identified as individual, rather a carrier of masculine community value. This epics has an influence, like they tell how women ought to be like, what an ideal woman should do, and what is the work of a woman. Like they try to narrate and shape our society according to it. Like women are very much considered as upholder of male honor and reason behind sexual crimes. For example, you may see like disrobing of Draupadi. The incident of disrobing of Draupadi is a threat to masculine ego of her husbands, and which is sufficient for the inducement of war. Similarly was the abduction of Sita. there is the picture of ideal woman is created in our epics. Like an ideal woman is the one who is submissive, meek, self-sacrificing, and obedient, who doesn't protest basically. The women in Mahabharata who are quite popular and the women of power, we may say, are the ones like Draupadi, who is a knot between her 5 husbands. Like she doesn't protest for what she wants. One of the husband has won her, and then she works as a tie between 5 of her husbands. So basically, she is the wife of her 5 husbands. Similarly, Kunti is like the motherly figure.
Please try to wind up. You have a little bit.
Yeah.
Please kindly try to wind up.
Yeah, surely. So, yeah, I'll do that really quick. So, women are always projected with the accordance of male they are associated with, like for their husband, for their children, for their progeny and all. And we see a constant manipulation in the epics with time to legitimize power in the society. For example, you may see like in in Valmiki's Ramayana, there is no depiction of Lakshman Rekha. But eventually, as the writers have created, we cannot say where exactly this thing came up from, but Lakshman Rekha was instituted in the epic to force women to stay within a boundary. And today we know like Lakshman Rekha stands for this chalk which kills cockroaches. We can see the social comparison of women with an insect here. So I was focusing on the work of Kavita Kane. Kavita Kane is a professional journalist, worked as an assistant editor of Times of India, has worked around 20 years with several publishing houses. We would focus on 2 of her main books. One is Kavita Kane's Karna's Wife, The Outcast Queen, which was published in 2013, and The Fisher Queen's Dynasty, 2017. She has expanded the canvas for marginalized women in our epics, and her works are very much mythological. Kavita Kane's Outcast Wife, Karna's Wife, The Outcast Queen, is a debut novel which proclaimed her position as a renowned author. Now we see like despite of her name, Karna's wife, her name, the protagonist of the novel is Uruvi. Despite of her beautiful name, she had to name the book as Karna's wife to make her identifiable to Indian audience, because her existence didn't really was seen to the Indian audience. Rather, they were known. All the women characters are known by their husbands and fathers. Similarly, Fisher Queen's Dynasty, like it is about Satyavati, who is very much marginalized. There is really very few mention about Satyavati in the actual Mahabharata, though the later writers in Haribamsa Purana, they have mentioned about her. Satyavati is the mother of, technically the queen mother of, and the mother of Vichitravirya and Chitrangad, and the wife of Shantanu, who overturns the fortunes of Hastinapur and Kuru clan. So basically the entire Mahabharata is about the dynasty of Satyavati, but it is always related with Bharata, who is no more associated with the battle and all the plot twisting happening. In this epics, we see like women characters are marginalized. They are put aside, and males are seen as the carrier of values like courage, greed, and valor, because they go to war, they die in war, and we totally ignore the people who don't go to war, rather they stay behind and suffer. And India, we see that the individual identities of women are not at all seen. They are associated with the caste of the male they are associated with. Hence, this caste system, which was supposed to be a hierarchical system to put people according to their working class, they didn't identify women. So it somehow really referred women as they are good for nothing. They were better. They are just associated with their husband, who is into this work system, and their original identity do not exist. There had been a constant rejection like of women, like as ma'am has told us right here about Sadat Hasan Mantos, पहली खुशी जो हम बेटियों से छीन लेते हैं वो है पैदा होने की खुशी. The similar thing happens with Satyavati. As soon as she was born, she was given away to a poor fisherman. And similar thing happens with Kunti. Kunti is given away to Kunti Voja, like just like that. Like her existence is denied. They are rejected. They hardly get any place in the political power and the political things there. And most important thing we see that women who are idealized are the one who have adhered to male values. Their own values do not exist. Their adherence to male values cause their idealization. Like Kunti, like in the book, if you go through the feminine perspective that Kavita Kane has allowed us to have, Uruvi could see through Kunti as a woman who foreshadows her real being. She is always covering herself up to fit with the society. And hence she is idealized for that. So the real existence of woman is totally neglected. Kavita Kane works very much to justify the stance of women in our epics, which has a significant influence in our culture. The male characters have used women to cleanse their chivalrous image at several points. For example, the birth of Satyavati, there is this story which is like the king has a nocturnal emission in the forest and he sends his semen to his wife, the queen, through an eagle. And the eagle has a fight with another eagle in the air and the semen falls in the water, which is consumed by a fish. And the fish was a cursed Apsara, Adrika, and she gives birth to two children. But Kavita Kane busts this. Rather than believing in that story, which was previously carried on by several writers, Kavita Kane says it was not like that. It was rather a poor fisherman who became the prey of the lust of the king and who was eventually raped and impregnated and died during the childbirth. Like the cleansing of male image which in our epics had been very much common, and this thing had been busted by modern writers like Kane and Divakurni, Chitra Banerjee Divakurni for sure. Kane carries a unique sense of feminine sensibility in his work. She puts and justifies woman character in our epics who are totally neglected, and this negligence has caused the negligence of women in our society as a whole. Our epics had contributed immensely in shaping the society, as we all know. And so it was very important to bring about the feminine perspective of our epics to have a balance in our society to move it to the idealization. Thank you, everyone. I took too much time. Thank you, everyone, for this amazing opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Shandru, for giving different dimensions to the epic Mahabharata. Our next participant is Subhangi, MA Previous, Department in Main Campus, BHU. Subhangi.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Shubhangi from MA First Year, Department of Main Campus, BHU. Now I'd love to share my screen. Please let me know if it's visible.
Yes, Shubhangi, it's visible.
So the topic of my presentation is analyzing triple operation faced by Dalit women in Baby Kamble's The Prisons We Broke. Baby Kamble's autobiographical work, The Prisons We Broke, is itself the representative of unassailable strength of Dalit women. She kept her writing hidden for 20 years for the fear of wrath of her husband. By helping her in publishing her work, Maxine Bernstein gave us an opportunity to get to know about the triple atrocities that Dalit women had to undergo on the basis of caste, class, and gender. They soaked lands of upper-class Hindus with their sweat and blood, but only got humiliation, abuses, and stale food in return. Kamble has presented this stressful picture of Dalit girls who were married at the age of 10 to 12 years and had to undergo abysmal pain during childbirth. The girl had only two options, either to survive the unhygienic and superstitious practices along with hunger or to die. The men of their house, who were enslaved everywhere outside the home, satisfied their human need of domination by torturing women of the house. In this darkest scenario, Dr. D.R. Ambedkar gave them a voice of propagating importance of education among them and forbidding them from eating their animals. Baby Kamble herself is the product of the Mahan movement led by him. exploring the marginal dimensions of caste, class, and gender. Upper caste people marginalized Dalit geographically and psychologically by keeping them in the filthy corner of the village and by treating them like filth. They lived in their house but could not dare to drink a drop of water there. They did not dare to cross their path. Dalit women could not use the regular road used by the higher castes. Dalit men were nothing more than slaves for the rest of the village, but even they felt the need to feel like human, and for that they enslaved their 8 to 9 years old daughter-in-law. These girls lived their life as slave, or as Gail Ombit, a feminist sociologist, would call it, they were Dalit among Dalit. They were deprived of all human rights, including dignity, income, education, and religious rights. Her husband would be encouraged by his father to chop off her nose. Cutting off nose of women was quite common almost till 1940s. No relative gave shelter to such girls, and their lives ultimately got sacrificed. Maha girls were married at the unripe age of 9-10 years on account of the lack of education among their parents. Early marriage inevitably caused early pregnancy and ultimately brought perpetual cycle of suffering in the life of these unfortunate girls. They had to give birth to their children without any sanitation facilities. Many girls would lose their battle with life, and some survived. Even after all these tortures, there were only few women who were fortunate enough to get gruel made of jowar, which could have been the cheapest diet to provide to a new mother. Rest of them had to bear pangs of hunger after childbirth. Dalit women got possessed very often in the villages. They got possessed by various goddesses. Their men used to fall at her feet with folded hands. They applied haldi kumkum on her forehead and asked for forgiveness. It worked like a revenge for these otherwise maltreated women. Devdasi system was also prevalent among Mahars. Baby Kamble had mentioned in her book of Mahar, saying, the goddess Ambabai especially favors the house that offers her girl as Jogati. The house becomes her favorite. There are many instances where Dalit couple would pray for a son, and on fulfillment of the wish, they would offer one of their daughters as Devdasis. Ray of hope in the darkness. Devi Kamble has not only presented the dark past, but also the optimistic ray of hope in life of Dalits. The ray of hope came in their life in face of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. As Kamble writes, from 1930 onwards, his name started reaching villages like a gentle breeze that brings succor in the scorching sun. Our Bhim Raja decided to awaken his people from people who had sunk to the level of subhumans. The man who gave birth to the Human Code Bill was my King Bhim, the son of morality, savior of the world. It is because of him that my pain can scribble out some thoughts. It is because of him that I joined the struggle against the oppression and contribute my small mite to it.
Excuse me, Subhangi, please wind up. You have 2 minutes left.
Yes. Ambedkar played a major role in women's political radicalization to defy the authority of established caste system. He even burnt a copy of Manusmriti on December 25, 1927. He called endogamy, that is marrying in one's own caste, a way to keep caste system intact. The Prisons We Broke is the story of Dalit women's realization of their self-worth and their journey from darkness to light. Devi Kamble herself faced many issues women of her community, including domestic violence, but her concern was never at personal level. She calls herself product of Ambedkarite movement, and she expects modern day educated Dalits who have started to behave like upper castes to not forget about their past and work for the Dalits who are still being oppressed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Subhangi, for this wonderful presentation on Dalit women. So the next participant is Anukriti, BA Final, Vasanta College for Women. Anukriti.
Good afternoon, all. I hope I'm clearly audible.
Yes, you are.
This was an interesting opportunity for me, and the sub theme which I chose was the intersectionality of class, caste, gender, religion, ethnicity, and women. So, presenting my own research on this, I took the author Andali Wajid as the main artist who curated a wonderful literature of Muslim identities, which have been stereotypically represented so far in our culture. And being a Muslim woman herself, Andali Wajid closely depicts, elaborates, and unearths all the hidden aspects or those aspects which are often overlooked in the case of generalization of humans. So the work in particular is her book More Than Just Biryani, and very aptly titled so, food or cooking is the only binding factor which binds 3 generations of women in a family, in a Muslim family. Zubi, the protagonist, her mother Tahira, and her grandmother Ruqayya. So, quoting from the novel itself, which although appears at the end, for her mother, food had helped her deal with pain. The ordinariness of everyday food that sustained them had made her mother realize that death may take away loved ones, but we had to keep living for those who lived. But for her grandmother, it had been the opposite. The extraordinariness of desserts she had learned to make had helped her carve a niche for herself, despite the fact that cooking was not her forte. So, placed differently in time and place, these are 3 women characters in the Muslim context, which present the picture of the vaguely imagined familiar figure of Muslim females we are used to, but also unearthing the uniqueness in them with their merging quality of all the other citizens of this world. The humane connect that the Muslim women have, coupled with their own struggles and lifetime opportunities which they are subjected to, there's a wonderful presentation of how these women are desirous, anxious, sheltered, all at the same time. For a community which values social customs with a rather compulsive attitude, or at least it is projected that way, this work is a landmark portrayal where a middle class Indian single mother who is pregnant and widowed has her emotions overpowering the necessity of the death rituals of her husband. Speaking of Tahira, the mother of the protagonist, and quoting about her situation from the text itself. Lifting her hands in supplication seemed like a mockery. The only thing that she wanted desperately was something that prayer couldn't give her. So why bother? In these lines, we see how being a Muslim lady herself and being involved in the day-to-day activities of customs which are followed in the Muslim households, like Fajr Namaz, the Fatiha, 7th day reading, they find prominence in the text. But still, Andali Wajid has the remarkable capacity to separate the distinct emotion which is felt by her women. The humane angle provided makes those women more relatable. Moving Moving on to Zubi, the daughter. In 2010, we see in Hong Kong, she observes Ramazan very remotely and she has no stories to share, but her acquaintance with a journalist friend brings out a lot more than memories.
Excuse me, Anukriti, please try to wind up. You have 2 minutes left.
Sure. Then there's Ruqayya, and who discovers that hunger was not it wasn't about filling your stomach, satisfying your hunger pangs. That was for everyday food, and that anybody could make. A properly prepared dessert, however, lingers in one's memory and teases the taste buds. It can convert any occasion into one of celebration, and Ruqayya marveled at how little she had understood this before. We see how intimacy and the description of it has come in a respectful manner in the text. On some nights, physical needs overshadowed their strained relationships. That was the only time Zubi allowed her mind to stop controlling her actions. She told herself that she could enjoy those moments and was entitled to them. In fact, she looked forward to their intimacy because that meant she would see Khalid, her husband, like she never saw him at any other time. Seldom has this been explored in such a elegant manner, in such a respectful manner, and all in the modern popular fiction literature, we find this is somewhat missing. This entire description with the way Anjali Wajid presents itself. With this, I rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Anukriti, for enlightening us with your presentation. The next participant is Sneha from MA Final, Vasanta College for Women. Sneha? Sneha, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Deepana. Am I properly audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
So, greetings to all my professors, my dear classmates present over here. This is Sneha. Today, my paper for presentation is Tribal Literature of Jharkhand, and my title is Jacinta, a Feminine Adivasi Voice. My significance for the paper is why I have chosen Jacinta to study, understanding the tribals, to voice the Adivasi, and she represents the concept of Up Deepo Bhava, which is our emblem of college. She is Jacinta Kerketa. She is a poet, writer, freelance journalist from the Jharkhand. She belongs to the female tribal voice from the Urao community. She had got many awards like in 2014, she received Indigenous Award of Asia for journalistic work. Again, Prerna Samman Prize in the same year. And in 2015, Ravi Shankar Upadhyay Memorial Youth Poetry Award. And in 2017, she got a Prajita Award by Prabhat Khabar. And in 2019, Women Exemplar Recognition Award. Recently, she has published her works and she is chosen for the publication in India Today magazine. She says, the sight of trees they cannot stand, for the roots of trees they climb land. Her notable works are Jadon Ki Zameen, in English, Land of the Roots, Angor, and third, Iswar Aur Bazaar. She originally writes in Hindi, but we can find her translated works in English, French, Italian, German. Who are tribals? So these are the pictures of tribals, and our chief guest has beautifully explained about the tribal history. So I skip. She basically talks about 5 J's, which are Jal, Jungle, Jameen, Zamir, Zuban. Jal stands for water, Jungle stands for forest, Zamir for land, Zamir identity or integrity, Zuban that is language. The whole Adivasi community is fighting an unequal war from the non-Adivasi people, Bhu mafias, and obviously politicians. She is a contemporary voice of the Adivasi female. Her works represent metropolis and marginals within the country. She is describing about the concept of everyday terror in her works. This is the poem which I want to describe. Its title is Sahib, Kaise Karoge Kharis? In English, Sahib, pray how will you dismiss? She writes, Sahib, a day will come when a girl from the jungle will reveal. Yes. In her poem, she will disclose the way your forest guards, in the name of the search operation, lay their prevented hands on her clothes, the way your troops break down doors and barge into their homes, how children pick up guns as if they are guli danda, and how their hearts get filled with gunpowder. Sahib, there will come a day when every girl from the jungle will write poems. To dismiss them, what will you say? What will you say? Pray tell, Sahib, that this is no poetry but a news report, a story, isn't it? So she is asking the questions. How will you dismiss? Here, he also answers the question of Spivak, can the subaltern speak? So, in a way, we can say yes, she can. She answers the question, yes, subaltern can speak. They too have their voice. But the main concern is to how extent her voice goes. This is the main agenda of the paper, to what extent our voice goes or the female Adivasi voice goes. To conclude, I would like to quote her from her Facebook page. She writes, The wait, वे हमारे सभ्य होने के इंतजार में हैं और हम उनके मनुष्य होने के. In English, I translate, they wait for us to become civilized while we wait for them to become human. For your reference, I would like to play an audio so you can feel the essence of tribal community of Jharkhand. Yes. So, in very last, I would like to say, she continues writing poetry along with journalism, so a huge mass can reach her. Moreover, she is a female Adivasi voice. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Sneha, for such a creative and amazing presentation. Next participant is Pallavi from MA Final, Vasanta College for Women. Pallavi?
Deepna, just confirm once if my screen is visible.
Okay. Yes, Pallavi, it's visible.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Pallavi from Vasanta College of Women, and today I'm going to brief you on my paper, the title of which is Indigenous Women in the Plays of Bhikhari Thakur, an account of stories and realities infused together. Folk literature mirrored the regional conscience, culture, and civilization of a society in a dialect of one's own. Recently, if you have noticed, empowerment has become more of a culturally cliched concept concerning women from certain strata of society, mostly urban. So, development in the regional part of our country basically lurks in these regional tales and folklores. So, among this pervasive canon of regional literature, born a playwright come performer from Bihar, whose name was Bhikhari Thakur, and whose Bidesiya Nach. Nach in Bhojpuri region means an innovative dance come theatrical performance with all the swang and hand movement, body movement, and the performance inculcate all these things. Dominated the Purvanchal belt of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. In the turbulent period of India's struggle for freedom, he took up the cause of neglected and agonized women of rural India and exposed societal shortcomings through them. For Thakur, the liberation of India as a country holds equal importance as the liberation of miseries of rural women. So, Bhikhari Thakur basically elucidated women character in different roles and at different stages of their life. So, moving to one of his most acclaimed play, Bidesiya. Bidesiya portrays a prostitute and a wife of the male protagonist, the legal wife of male protagonist, living under the same roof. Bhikhari Thakur says, in a patriarchal world which never fails to question the sanctity of a woman, a prostitute was not only given shelter by the legal wife in the same household, but also she accepted her children as well. This dramatic situation goes beyond the disposition of law, the 1955 Hindu Marriage Act, which says a Hindu man at least can't have another wife in his house if he is already married and that wife is still alive. So this play also shatters centuries-old conventional construct of morally right and wrong when it comes to a prostitute. Also, Sundari, the wife of the protagonist, or also one of the pivotal character in this play, amicably accept prostitute and her children in her house. Also, reject the much anticipated notion of women being considered as women's worst enemies. Also left behind by her husband, Sundari is a character which shows independence, determination, and also optimism. So Bhikhari Thakur did not portray his character as meek or submissive. Also, the prostitute set the example of morally upright women because when the play closes, when the play is about to come to an end, she asks her children to touch the feet of the stepmother, which shows the today's idea that we should inculcate good habit in our children at younger ages so that they can respect women when they are a grown-up person. So a prostitute is setting the foundation for a better tomorrow. Now moving ahead in his next play. This next play went on to a transformation of title from being Beti Viyog. Viyog means sadness that comes from separation. So separation of a daughter basically from a daughter. So this title went on transformation being Beti Viyog to becoming Beti Bechwa. Bechwa means selling of daughter. So this impromptu transformation doesn't come from the playwright, but the transformation was by the crowd, the spectator who was so moved by the play that they vowed against selling of their daughter to older men and also said no to child marriage. It was a play based on a true incident where juvenile daughters from a poverty-stricken families of Purvanchal belt, especially Bihar and UP, were either sold off or married to an older woman of their grandfather age just for money. At one point in this play, the daughter says, I know, father, I was born a girl and you sold me off for money, but in this bargain, in this agreement you have made by selling out of me, the loss is indefinite for you. You have to suffer loss, though you are thinking that you have gained money by selling me, but it is actually a loss. I have quoted her words. That hum kahi ke jaat bani, this is obviously in Bhojpuri and I will explain it to you in English. Hum kahi ke jaat bani hoi ab jeev ke hani, nahi dekhab nagariya ho babuji. Babuji is how we fondly address to father in Bhojpuri. Then she says that now I am going and I am saying this to you that the jeev, the inner being inside me, is going to suffer every day from now on onwards. I don't want to go to my in-laws' house again, but you are sending me back to their house. My soul, my inner being will suffer relentlessly from here. So Bhikhari Thakur chronicles the entire journey of a woman from rural household, from her early childhood to being sold off to an older men in Beti Bechwa, to agonizing widow in the final stages of her life in Vidwa Vilap. Vidwa Vilap is another play of Bhikhari Thakur. portraying the agonized widow thwarted out of their homes after the death of her husband. Though Sati Pratha was completely eradicated from India after independence, for widows it still was a harsh and barbaric world. They were considered cursed and have to live a life dependent on other. So she is saying कि कौन कसूर कईनी, again in Bhojpuri I'm quoting her, कौन कसूर कईनी, कसूर is means fault. तो which कौन कसूर कईनी घर से निकालल गईनी, I was being thrown out of my house. छूटत जात बा नैहर ससुरलवा हो बबुआ. So like नैहर is basically in Bhojpuri the place
Excuse
of
me,
a
Pallavi, please try to wind up. You have 1 more minute, okay?
So Naihar is obviously the house of the girl, father and mother, and Sasural is obviously in-laws house. So she was questioning what was my fault? Where did I win? Where did I go wrong that I have to face all these hardship today? So these questions might sound diminished in a stature today, in today's world where we have progressed so much. But when we go into the remote part of our country, though we don't sell our daughter today, but every single time a girl is born in a rural household, the question of marriage is affixed with her fate. When we are going to marry her, how we are going to marry her. And then there is dowry. The case of dowry is still prevalent in our region. Now moving on to one last play of Bhikhari Thakur, Gabargi Chor, which is often compared with Bertolt Brecht, The Caucasian Chalk Tree, depicts the character of a radical woman. This is a mother trying everything to save his son from the accusations of society. Basically, it was her illegitimate son. So this is not about a mother-son duo. This portrait shatter all the notions of masculinity. Like he's wearing bangles and doing things in his eyebrow. This shatter just all the notions adhered to a masculinity and how a man should be. So here as a Nachaniya in Bhojpuri means one who performs and do the dance as well in a drama, in a leela, and in a dance movement. He was an unprivileged, uneducated outcast who weaved stories and character that remained relevant and rebellious till date. Infused in entertainment, he envisioned social reform through his play because he brought the renaissance to the Bhojpuri belt of UP and Bihar through his Videshiya Bhav. He stands in the line of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Rabindranath Tagore because he might not put any revolt in the society, but for the upliftment of girls and women, which Bhojpuri society was in dire need of, Bhikhari Thakur art and Bhikhari Thakur Videshiya Bhav brought that revolution needed in the Bhojpuri society. That's it. Thank you for your patience and listening.
Thank you, Pallavi, for your erudite presentation. The next participant is Ritika De from MA Previous, Vasanta College for Women. Ritika? Ritika, are you there? I think Kritika is not there. So with these spectacular presentations, we have come to the end of the second session of today's event. But hold your curiosity and thirst of knowledge intact as the third session is beginning from here. I would like to hand over the mic to Prachi from MA Previous, Vasanta College for Women, to host the third session from here on. Thank you everyone for your cooperation, support and patience. Over to you, Prachi.
Thank you so much. I am Prachi Mishra from VCW College, and from here I will be hosting the rest of the session. So first of all, I would like to call first student Rashi Podar, MA first year from Vasanta College for Women, Rajghat. Rashi? Rashi, are you there? Rashi? I think she is not with us now. So let's move forward to the second student. Second, we have Sudiksha from MA first year from Vasanta College of Women's, Rajghat. Sudiksha?
Um, yes. Am I audible and visible?
Yes, yes, you are audible and visible both.
Please let me know if I'm audible.
You are audible, but I think there is some network issue. So, Diksha, are you there? Can you listen to me? So, Diksha?
Yes. Can you? Am I visible and audible now?
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay. 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 So please let me know if my presentation is visible too. Prachi, can you please let me know if my presentation is visible?
Prachi, you can do one thing. Ask the other student. By the time Sudiksha, you check your technical thing. The other student can present by that time. Okay, Prachi?
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Okay, so third participant is Ronak Gupta, MS second year from DAV PG College. Ronak Gupta, are you there?
Yeah, I am here. So
okay,
just let me present the thing. Yeah, is it visible to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, hello everyone. This is my paper titled Kari by Amruta Patil, Finding the Other Women and Unsexing the Gender Trouble. So Kari is basically Amruta Patil's answer to the traditional feminism of Indian pop culture as we see. The problem with feminism in pop culture of India or feminism in general is that it keeps gender identity within the same heterosexual matrix that patriarchy would have liked to carry on with. So, I mean, previously in India, to portray women as something very special and something to protect, or perhaps an eye candy, these ideas have been replaced by the idea of the insinuation of women as someone who is to be worshipped, who is to be respected, and the portrayal of women as a hero of some kind has been insisted. Like, obviously in the female retellings of Ramayana or Mahabharata, the perspective shift is also, very prominent. So the resistance or counter in Kari or of Amruta Patil's is to go beyond the oppressive force of heterosexuality in which we are all fixed in some way or another. So as Judith Butler says in her book, Gender Trouble, that there is no sex, she is actually talking about the annihilation of sex, the biological object, as the determiner of our sexual identity. For her, it is not enough to just signify the sexuality biologically, to infer the identity of a person, male, female, or other. It is a discourse of sex, as Foucault says, describing what sexuality means. Butler, inspired from Foucault, takes this to a whole new level with the iteration of another word, which is gender. So here is basically a flowchart, graphical representation of how the history of sexuality and gender identity has been throughout the history. So during Enlightenment, with the resurgence of biological and medical sciences, sex only meant the biological factor of a person, the assigned presupposition during a person is born. Freud changes it radically, relating sex to his concept of drive and subject formation. Then Jacques Lacan revises Freud and making sex a semiotic entity on the basis of the regulatory language of the father, which is basically the discourse of the patriarchal society. Foucault then appears and says that sex is not important to determine the identity. It is a discourse of sex that we need, which is sexuality. And later for Butler, it was whole new word. It was a whole new word to make the world forget about the connotations of the word sex, which is a predetermined factor. And the word was gender. She says that it is something which is not only discursive, which is according to Foucault, but expresses itself through performativity. The subject is a performative entity. So this is the very first panel of the comics, which is named Kari by Amruta Patil. So in this panel, we can see that the two characters are connected with a kind of an umbilical cord. Love means association through reciprocation. The connection here is symbolized by the umbilical cord. But the slipshod surgical procedure, which is mentioned there, refers to our crude society, which cannot see two women in love of one another, thriving in great success, both in terms of emotion and finance and in other terms. But it was unsuccessful. It does not matter how hard the society tries. They are meant to be connected together through their bond of love and mutual respect for their otherness, quote unquote. Next, there is a resistance. That's what perhaps comics is all about, perhaps in the whole world. It is in the very first panel, the scene of two girls bound by an umbilical cord, which is a symbol of birth, holding hands together. It seems like a detour from the common feministic perspective of India and other places and Indian pop culture, obviously. The story is set in a metropolitan city named Smog City and mostly revolves around it. Unlike Deepa Mehta's Fire or Ismat Chughta's Lihaf, which are also, both of them are lesbian stories, but those are mostly bound in an individual place that doesn't...
Excuse me, Ronak.
Yes.
Ronak, you have 2 more minutes left. Please wind up fast.
Yeah. Thank you. So the thing is that the lesbians of Indian literature as well are coming out of the closets of literature and getting full expression or a better vigorous expression in comics. In comics format, both visually and verbally through Kari. So Kari then tries to find solace without Ruth, her partner, that was shown in the first panel in the city. She takes up the role of an alter ego who in her off time, clears the sewers and rectifies the city's sanitary condition because she was saved from the fall by the sewer. So there is also the myth of redemption also coming into play. Later, as she fights with the heterosexual matrix in the society, the novel takes the comics takes several detours. I mean, Kari works in an ad agency where she has to do some things which actually opposes her own identity of gender. So there is this portrayal of an ad of a shampoo company named Fairy Tale Hair. So in that particular ad, the idea of fox has been pursued. The idea of fox as a pursuer of princess, male identity as a fox, as compared to that of a vixen in the female. The matrix of heterosexuality not only in their world but in our world too, which kind of binds all of us together. Now, at the end, Kari helps us recognize that these women also exist. It is very important. But it is not something which we already do not know. We are just ignorant enough to give them an individual space to fathom. Kari explores that these women live almost everywhere in our society, in every layer, We just need to look beyond our heterosexual transgressiveness to give them their due place and right to explore their personal sexuality. The many times even I use the word there, I try to insinuate the otherness in them, but we need to remember that we are also other in their perspective. We do not have to be uniform in diversity in terms of gender equality, but we need to be united in the diverse culture of gender and body politics that exist within the discourse and give voices to them, to make their gender roles performative in a way to build the vision that perhaps Judith Butler and Amrita Patil likes envisions for the future India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ronak, for your presentation. Now, if Sudiksha is ready. Sudiksha, are you there?
Yes, Prachi, can you tell me if I'm visible and audible now?
Yes, you are visible and audible.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just getting the presentation ready. Yes, is it visible now? The presentation?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone, and sorry for the previous glitch. And I'm Sudiksha Chatterjee from MA Previous, Vasanta College for Women, Rajghat. And the topic for my presentation is female representations in Takumar Jhuli, Bangla Roop Kotha, and Anthology of Bengali folk tales. So Takumar Jhuli has been a name which I've been very familiar to since childhood because I've grown up in a Bengali household. And it is an anthology of folk tales, from times unknown. And it was compiled and it was published in 1907, a time which was very politically active in Bengal. And due to the newly partitioned Bengal and the Swadeshi movement in full swing, and the Bengali Renaissance also flourished side by side. And at this juncture, Dakshina Ranjan Mitra Mojumdar, he carried a phonograph to the far villages of Bengal, and he actually recorded these folk tales from the women there, and it was then published. And it came to the notice of the Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore, and in fact, he was the one who wrote the preface to this anthology. And in the preface, he shows his admiration, and also he shows his concern for the young minds who are growing up, who were actually growing up at that time, listening to the English fairy tales. And he was very, very concerned about that matter because the young minds, they need to be raised, grounded in their culture, according to him. And the Takumar Jhuli, this anthology for him, would do the trick. He was very positive about that, and he is very appreciative of this. And in fact, in the preface, he makes a very beautiful, comparison between breast milk, the importance of breast milk, and the importance of folk tales in growth of a child. And he calls upon all the women, especially the mothers and the grandmothers of Bengal, to raise their children right, and to lull them into sleep while reciting these stories so that they know what their culture and heritage actually is. So when we move into the text, we come across an overwhelming number of she-demons who are actually the Rakushis or the Rakshasis. And the Rakshasis are actually an extremely popular trope in Bengali folk literature. And these evil women, they are very clever, they're manipulative, and they seduce their ways into the kingdom, and they, create havoc when they get into the king's palace. And actually, these femme fatale, these she demons, they are actually the symbolic representation of the independent women with, hysteric sexuality and their self-centered nature as they are viewed in a patriarchal society. And surprisingly, we see a very contrasted image of motherhood. In the preface, the motherhood is eulogized and it is elevated on a pedestal where it is revered and worshipped. And now suddenly these femme fatales, these rakshasis, they dismantle the entire image of motherhood. They actually go on to kill their own sons. And here we are left with a very poignant observation that why only these evil women depicted as the bad mothers? Maybe because that is how the patriarchal society views a woman who is actually not desirous of being a mother or raising a kid or bearing a child. And it is very natural. Some women may not feel that urge, but they are reduced to being inhuman. They are not considered feminine enough. And
Excuse me, Sudiksha.
yes, yeah, I'm winding up.
Please try to wind up.
Yeah, sure. So, next instance we come across is the cross dressing. There's a story of Kiran Mala. She dresses up as a man and goes on to the magical mountain to rescue her brothers who have been turned into marbles by the Apsaras. So, there we see an instance of cross dressing, and there's actually if I may quote from the text, she had to keep her eyes casted down to avoid the charms of the. We come to the main objectives of the paper, which was to highlight the impressive arrays of female characters in the folktales of this anthology, and to see how actually it showcases a number of female characters from different walks of life, different attitudes, different situations, and how they are placed in the folk tales, and how they are metaphoric and symbolic representations of the real women. And these women actually they go beyond the stereotypes, and there are women who are very feminine. Some of them are demonic, they are ugly, they don't fit into the standard the standard beauty. And even the image of motherhood is dismantled and constructed again by other characters. So the thing that I would like to say is that this anthology is not limited in its scope, in its treatment of feminism, and it actually gives a lot of potential. A feminist reading has a lot of potential in this folk tales, and we can see that the folk tales, the representations are actually very, very, very progressive than we think they are. We often think that folk tales, the ancient texts, didn't have a lot of scope for female characters, but this is something which is, decrystallized in this folk tale, Takumar Julie. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sudiksha, for your presentation. Now, the fourth participant is Abhishek Pradyot, BA third year from DAV PG College. Abhishek, are you there?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So the title of my research is Disparity Between Theory and Practice in reference to Mutating Goddesses, Bengal's Lockic Hinduism and Gender Rights. So the main objective of this study is to explore the differences between Indian Brahminical society's ideals and its practices of gender inequality. In Indian culture, since ancient times, the female has been worshipped as Prakriti and Shakti. This practice evolved throughout history in a patriarchal society as a mechanism for women's subjugation. The study attempts to explore how the cult of goddess worship has been used to subjugate women while analyzing Bengal's Lokik Hinduism through the book Mutating Goddesses, Bengal's Lokik Hinduism and Gender Rights, written by Saraswati Sen Gupta. She is professor in Miranda House, Department of English. So, myths have played a vital role in binding women in the role of a nurturing mother, a servile ideal wife, and a chaste daughter. Before the Vedic culture, a goddess was a powerful deity, was worshipped, but the allocation of a husband, father figure to these deities was marked as a strategy to dominate the gender hierarchy. There is a clear relation between myths of gods and goddesses, their attributes, and gender roles. So, as Simone de Beauvoir has said, one is not born but made a woman. Mythology is one of the instruments in this making. So, what is this Lokik tradition of Bengal? The tradition of myth and worship, which are not recorded and canonized in Sanskrit, constitute the Lokik tradition, which is propagated in other popular forms such as folk songs or tales. In Bengal, there are Brat Kathas and Mangal Kavyas, which keep the narratives of various traditions of Hinduism. The domain of cult worship of goddesses control a woman through the belief she forms. The notion of equality is never seen, thus never questioned and remains unchecked. Through exploring the history of these four goddesses in Bengal's Lokik tradition, Mansa, Chandi, Sashti and Lakshmi, subjugation mechanism of parting the feminine power as the all-pervading and all-powerful, but on the other hand, the marginalization of women becomes evident. So we have the first goddess, that is Mansa. So Mansa, she is a powerful female goddess who defied social norms of gender, but has a bad image among the masses. The feminist attributes to Mansa are her non-conformism to the fixed notion of the role, a powerful image, and struggle for her identity. But this image of Mansa is countered through Behula, who is a devotee of Mansa and an ideal woman as per the patriarchal norms. Behula was revered as a sati after her husband's death. There is a creation of goddess power in the locus of male Brahmana, and this goddess's powers is originating from a male. In case of Mansha, this is Shiva and sage Kashyapa. So she is given a negative image for being a scorning deity, demanding rights for the status of godhood, a very defying of the conventional norms of womanhood. She is independent and as powerful as she can resuscitate the dead, and who even saved her father, Shiva, after he drank poison. But due to her very persona, she is despised by all. In Mangal Kavya, she is described as having Vish Drishti, that means the eyes of poison. So, to cast her first in a stereotypical woman, but when she rebels against her domestication, she is vilified as a cruel and agonized goddess. To tell the women of society to be like Behula and not like Mansa. The second goddess we have is Chandi. She is a goddess with dualities mutated by narrators of Mangal Kavyas and Brat Kathas to meet the perfection of an ideal woman. A goddess born out of combined energies of male deities, again rooting the source of female power under the origin of a male power. Goddesses are manipulated to keep the women inside the boundaries of marriage and patriarchal norms. It is thus due to these manipulations that she has two extreme attributes and ones. Sen Gupta writes about Chandi that Chandi is a rush of images that are at times contradictory. A virgin, wife, warrior and a mother, the goddess of plenty and the wife of a hemp-soaked mendicant, dark and fair, roaming mountains and jungles, appearing mid-sea, minding children, protecting groves, quaffing drinks, loud laughter, and rituals of blood and sacrifice. The sister goddess Dakinis were despised by all, and they have been used to attribute women with the name of Dani and burn them alive, which is known as witch hunting, and which is still prevalent in some parts of India. And then we have the third goddess, Sashti. She is the idea of motherhood, a confinement of female sexuality to produce a child and be a nurturing mother, is what Shashti's image is carved out of. She is not a very popular goddess, but her presence is felt on the 6th day after the birth of a child. There is her association with Vrat Kathas that celebrate motherhood. What is common in these Kathas are that the female is either not be getting a son or faces trouble after childbirth, but the reason that underlies all these problems is always a flaw in the women's conduct. Trust is then evoked either through fasting rituals of prayer by the aspiring women who are eager for motherhood. And then the fourth goddess is Lakshmi. She is the consort of Vishnu. She is the goddess of wealth, prosperity, and she is also a symbol of consortship. Common statement of Indian household, Graha Lakshmi. Daughters are regarded as Graha Lakshmi who are to go to her husband's home someday in future. Her mutation in history is similar to the tradition of giving a male deity, a female consort who is their ideal wife and devoted to their husband.
Excuse me, Abhishek.
Yeah.
You have 2 more minutes left. Please wind up fast.
Okay, I'm winding up. So tracing back to the origins of Lakshmi as a goddess, it might be possible that she had an independent cult worship, but later on, she was merged with the Vaishnava tradition, which associates her with Vishnu. Also, during the 18th and 19th century, with the advent of the idea of modernity entering through the British colonialism, short narratives were composed, such as Lakshmi Mangal, Lakshmi Charita, etc., with an emphasis on how Lakshmi is an ideal wife, therefore constructing a code of women to abide by and to check the idea of a modern woman. And then there was also a female deity, which is famous Radha, who is a consort of Krishna, and she's the most beloved of him. Radha was not domesticated. Rather, she was outside of patriarchal norms with a contempt of conservative eyes. How can love without marriage be tolerated by patriarchal eyes? The counter to Radha Krishna's tale's popularity was Lakshmi Mangal Kavyas by propagating an image of an ideal woman who is a chaste wife. Lakshmi is narrated as per the changing social scenario to conserve the image of the traditional domestic wife. Therefore, the conclusion is these 4 goddesses, Mansa, Chandi, Shashti, Lakshmi, are worshipped, but the cult of worship is also a reason of how women have been marginalized in the Indian patriarchal structure. Thank you. And thank you, Vasanta College, for giving this platform. And I thank my professor, Vanna Balchandani, for mentoring me in this research. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. Now, contestant number or participant number 5, Apurva Chandra, MA, first year from Vasanta College of Women, Rajghat. Apurva, are you there?
Yeah, hello, Prachi.
Yeah.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. Please let me know if it is visible or not. Just give me a second, please. Yeah, is the screen visible?
Yes.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. This is Apurva Chandra from MA Previous, Vasanta College for Women. And the title of my paper is Voices That Echo. In this paper, I have discussed various sub-themes related to the paper and various works by tribal and non-tribal writers. So please let me begin my paper. Introduction. This world at large is a patriarchal society. I'm sure majority of women here have at some point in their lives have faced the pressure of patriarchy. Women have to face challenges and question themselves that whether to break free from the pressure of patriarchy or to succumb to it. And here I would like to quote a poem by Bruceless K. Sangma, a Garo poet. She writes, I believe I can achieve many things amidst the human angels surrounded by the world's treasures, but I firmly believe that I have to complete the roles assigned to me here, where I dream and breathe. The treatment of women in society and literature both has not been that of a friendly one. Men always have seemed to be the gatekeepers of literature. But women are more perseverant and stronger than the world gives them credit for. Even in the most difficult situations, they have maintained a tough front. Women writers like Toru Dutt, Arundhati Roy, Mamang Dai, Shantabai Kamble, and Kamla Das are an inspiration for women across the world. My next topic is the reception of tribal women in society and literature. Tribal people are the essence of India. They are the indigenous groups that live in Indian subcontinents. They are among the first settlers on these lands. Nature is an integral part of their lives. There are a number of tribal groups in India such as Santhal, Munda, Garo, Khasi. Despite their large population, they are oppressed and suppressed. As a result, they are reduced to marginalized section of the society. Tribal women make half the population of tribal people. Their condition is miserable. They are underprivileged and least educated. They are constantly subjugated and violated. They also suffer problems like identity crisis. When mainstream women writers have gained popularity, the same cannot be said about tribal women writers. Oral tradition of literary communication makes it difficult to document texts. Tribal literature is mostly in regional language, which makes it difficult for everyone to read. There has been representation of tribal women in writings of authors like Amrita Pritam, Geeta Mehta, and Mahashigadevi Devi, but they lack clarity of first-hand experience of incidents. Nidhi Dugar Kundalya, in her work White as Milk and Rice, writes, and I quote, that I was acutely aware of my non-tribal background when I spoke to them. and here them refers to tribal people. My next topic is role of translation in regional, tribal, and folk literature. Prominent Indian writer Rabindranath Tagore wrote, "If God so wished, he could have made all Indians speak one language. The unity has been and always shall be a unity in diversity." India is the fourth largest country in terms of dialects spoken. Though this fact strengthens the value of unity in diversity, it proves to be a roadblock in the widespread of regional literature. Most of the tribal literature is in regional or folk language, and majority of tribal writers cannot translate their works. Sadly, India lacks good translators. Thus, the regional works remain confined to a small group of readers. Efforts are being made to overcome this problem. Sahitya Akademi launched a project to publish a series of translate regional and folk literary works. One of the works of this series is compiled by Laltuangia Khyangte, a Padma Shri recipient. Retracing struggles of Santal tribe in writing of Regina Marandi. Santal is one of India's major tribes occupying areas of eastern India. Like all tribes, they also have struggled with oppression and suppression. Regina Marandi is a Santal writer and winner of Adivasi Writing Prize, Adivasi Pickle 2013. In her work, Becoming Me, she talks about the outcomes of ethnic riots of 1996 in Assam. Through the character of Leah, she discusses the identity crisis suffered by Santal people of different generations. She focuses on socio-economic, political, and personal struggles of Santal tribe. Becoming Me is a story of hope and light getting lost in the darkness of riots and violence. Marandi writes, "All hopes were shattered, poor Adivasis were not allowed to live again." Quote. She also showcases the deep-rooted values of unity among the tribal people. Regina Marandi presents a heart-wrenching picture of the evils brought about by the ethnic riots like burning of houses, killing of young children, rape and killing of women. The story also deals with undertones of feminism. Marandi in her book expresses her guilt and sense of responsibility towards a fellow
Excuse me, Apurva.
Yes.
Please try to wind up fast.
Yes, okay. Her fellow tribal people through the character of Leah. She writes, "I want to explore and understand the problems of Santal identity in modern society." Diverse verses. Jacinta Kirkatta is a prominent Hindi poet. In her collection of poem Angor, she throws light on issues like domestic violence, estrangement and loss of identity of women in marital relationship. She also discusses the impacts of urbanization, industrialization, and capitalism on the lives of tribal people. Kirkatta has also used satire in her anthology. A poem titled In Favor of the Sheep is a satire on political hypocrisy, where Adivasi people are referred to as sheep and political leaders as wolf. Angor is also an urge for Adivasi people to fight for what is valuable to them. The work being a translated one makes it more significant. Matrilineal society of the Khasi tribe. Matrilineal society is different from matriarchal society. The Khasi tribe of Shillong follows a tradition of matrilineal society where ancestry is traced through the mother. But one can argue if matrilineal society is any better than patriarchal society, because man is still the head of the house and women are not allowed to participate in the local governing institute. Nidhi Dugar Kaundelya, in her work White as Milk and Rice, writes, quote, "Besides, women secretly felt that their rights and privilege in society turned out to be more burdensome duties and responsibilities. They not only had to manage finances but also look after family and children, where the role of the father remained ambiguous." Unquote. Thus, the concept of empowerment remains more intangible than tangible. In her book, Kundelya also discusses cultural differences between Christian Khasis and native Khasis. Now, I'd like to discuss the position of tribal women in society as presented in different literary works. The position of tribal women in society remains debatable. They are victims more often than not, and their plight is ignored most of the times. Therefore, many writers have written about their pain in their stories so that it could reach a wider audience. Gopinath Mohanty, in his work The Ancestor, talks about an array of themes, one of which is the identity crisis faced by Paraja women and how they suffer marital frustration, sexual abuse, and domestic violence. On the other hand, Mahashigadevi, in her short story titled Draupadi, portrays the story of a Santal woman Draupadi who is arrested, raped, and beaten by the officials who arrest her for protesting for the rights of her fellow tribal people. The text is inspired by Mahabharata. Unlike Draupadi, Draupadi is not saved by Lord Krishna. She has to fight her own battles. At the end, she faces her violators, bloody, naked, but not defeated. Like her namesake, Draupadi is a warrior. And now I'd like to conclude my paper by quoting the American poet and civil rights activist Maya Angelou. She says, "A bird doesn't sing because it has an answer, it sings because it has a song." The stories written by tribal men and women are more a question than an answer, a question to us, their fellow citizens, that where did we go wrong and how to make it right. Tribal women have been fighting a long-term battle with their words to bring the marginalized to the center. It's not just their struggles, it's the struggles and dreams of their predecessors that they fight for. American writer Rebecca Solnit wrote, "Some women get erased a little at a time, some all at once, some reappear. Every woman who appears wrestles with the forces that would have her disappear. She struggles with the forces that would tell her story for her, or write her out of the story. The genealogy, the rights of man, the rule of law. The ability to tell your own story in words or images is already a victory, already a revolt. Tribal literature is not just a document of revolts against subjugation, but also of victory. Victory of tribal people, which they achieved every time they refused to give up against oppression." Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Apurva. Now moving forward, we have Sonali Kumari, MA second year from VCW College.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
1 minute, please. And my screen is also visible now?
Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. The title of my paper is "A Version of Ramayana into Sitayana, a Modern Retelling." As there has been plethora of retelling, here I am going to examine retelling of Ramayana, which focuses on Sita. 1 minute. There has not been an echo. Actually, I have linked with two devices. That's why.
It was there, but it's fine now.
Oh God. 1 minute, please. Let me do. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. So the title of my paper is "A Version of Ramayana into Sitayana, a Modern Retelling." So there has been plethora of retellings, and here I'm going to analyze retelling of Ramayana, which focuses on Sita forging an independent identity for herself, beyond that shaped by the needs and desires of those around her. Here, I will attempt to explore Sita's capacity for action, how she manages to carve out new spaces for herself, not as, in single inverted comma, as a wife, but an individual. Hence, this retelling explored the maturation of Sita into a self-reliant individual who is not just someone's wife or mother, but beyond that. So, here is the biography of the writer. Popri Lalita Kumari has been using the pen name of Volga, and she has also been the recipient of Sahitya Academy Award for her short story collection that's in Telugu, Vimukta Kada Samupti. But it has been translated into English as The Liberation of Sita, and it's an exquisite masterpiece in the field of Indian translation in English by T. Vijay Kumar and C. Vijay Sri. The stories in The Liberation of Sita wheel around the characters like Sita in dialogues with the female characters like Supnaka, Ahalya, Renuka, and Urmila. Most of their stories are set post Sita's banishment from Ayodhya. Some are just after her marriage, and some set during her 14 years exile. And it comprises mainly 4 interconnected and independent stories that draw from the Ramayana and have the Sita as the chief character. Instead of grand and lofty persona of Rama, it's from the perspective of minor female characters. It's Supnakha, Ahalya, Renuka, and Urmila who take center stage and are instrumental in enlightening Sita. So here I have taken some images. Like if we look minutely at the TV serial Ramayana made by Ramanand Sagar, or like he also fails to provide least opportunity to female characters where they can hardly speak for themselves. They have been portrayed as submissive, obedient, and sufferable creatures. Indeed, it's a rarity to find any illustration or images of Sita alone. She is always depicted in the presence of males, usually with Rama, Hanuman, twins, sons, or Ravana. Here, just I have taken some images. It shows that Sita has, we couldn't find even one single images which talks about Sita. Now coming up on the then and now condition. Basically, the character of Sita from Ramayana has been such important. Sorry, 1 minute. Let me go. Actually, there has been so much voice with me. Extremely sorry for that. Actually, there has been some network issues in my room, so I had gone up in the room, but it's too much. So now coming up on the then and now situation. If we see the character of Sita from Ramayana has been one such important mythological character which has been interpreted differently in past and present ages. In the Ramayana, Valmiki has chiseled Sita's character as a harmonious embodiment of beauty, tenderness, or heart, abundance of compassion, fidelity that served her well in constantly surrendering her rights and interests and proved the maxim that one is not born but becomes. But in modern revisionist mythological works, the character of Sita and all the major female characters like Supnakha, Ahalya, Renuka, and Urmila have broken their mystified and stereotyped image as portrayed in the epic of Ramayana. The modern interpretation of the character of Sita, however, is completely distinct from that of old and traditional one. So now we go on the retelling of Supnakha. Popular retelling concentrate more on the pangs of Sita and other women characters in the epics such as Draupadi. However, Volga endeavors to bring in odes of Supnakha in a short story, The Reunion.
Excuse me, Sonali.
Yeah.
You have crossed your 5 minutes. You have 2 minutes more. Please wind up fast.
Okay. So here I conclude. Like the liberation in the title doesn't refer to Sita's freedom from Ravana's captivity, but rather from attachment to Rama and the grief it causes her. Supnakha, Ahalya, Renuka, and Urmila are a part of a journey towards maturation. Sita learns from the experiences, knowledge, and wisdom that these women share with her, and that adds her internal strength. In each story, Sita learns a lesson that facilitates her liberation. Hence, the bonds of sisterhood that these women forge amongst themselves are not merely as victims of patriarchy, but mature women in pursuit of self-realization. As Volga herself says, Sita's final war against herself. Sita rejects the man she loved so deeply and who loved her back equally, even gives her sons. The strength to leave Rama could not have come from her anger towards Rama alone. She leaves Rama with a much matured mind and understanding of her own selfhood. So to sum up, like in one of the articles by Adrian Ritz, she says that revision, the act, and here I quote Adrian Ritz, revision, the act of looking back, of seeing with fresh eyes, of entering an old text from a new critical direction is for us more than a chapter in cultural history. It's an act of survival. Until we can understand the assumption in which we are drenched, we cannot know ourselves. And this drive for self-knowledge for women is more than a search for identity. It's a part. It's a part of a refusal of the self-destructiveness of male-dominated society. Adding its claims for a change in the concept of feminine identity, we need to know the writing of the past and knew it differently than we have ever known it. Not to pass on a tradition, but to have our own justice. And here I end with one of the poem by Nandini Suha poem, Sukama, which is taken from a collection of poems that is Sukama and other poems. She says, I, Janki, the mother of Law Kush, demand justice today from the noblest king on earth for the wrong done to a pregnant woman and her unborn children, and justice for the fatherless teens. If justice cannot be given, what right has the king got to adorn Ayodhya's venerated throne? Aren't his queen and sons a part of its subject, deserting three guiltless people? Is it called honorable ethics? So here I end. Thank you very much. And sorry for distraction.
Thank you so much, Sonali. Now we have Pioli Karan from MA Final, VCW Rajghat. Pioli, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, one and all present here, and thank you for giving me the
यहाँ पे कोई होस्ट कर रहा है, उसका नाम है उद्दीपना कलिता। हाँ, कौन है बे? पता है क्या? असम इस बार।
Sirshendu, are you there? Sirshendu, please mute yourself. Yes, Pioli, continue.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate in this 6th colloquium. I am Pioli Karan from MA Final, and my title for today's event is Words of Now, Words of Memory, Authentic Voices of Tribal by Jacinta Kerketta. Jacinta Kerketta, a poet, a writer, and a freelance journalist, belongs to an Orao community of West Singhbum district, Jharkhand. Her poems such as O Sahar, Saranda Ki Phool, Geeto Ki Bilap, Vikas Ki Dhool, etc., collected in a book named Angor, are seen as an authentic voice of the Adivasi. The interests of big industry have been endangering the livelihood of Adivasi since long time, and this forms the framework of Kerketta's work. About her works, Jacinta never felt any hesitation, as she believed that what she is writing is true and she is not lifting things from imagination. An interesting fact that was observed in her writings was that its purpose was to modify the way in which the tribal women were being portrayed. The stereotypical views that were built upon them were challenged. Thus, we can see that like feminist literature and Dalit literature that were once under light shade, tribal literature filled with tribal consciousness is also trying to carve a path for itself in the world of literature. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pioli. Now we have Vatsala Priya, MA Final from VCW Rajghat. Vatsala, are you there?
Yes. Good morning, professors and my friends. I am Vatsala Priya from MA Final. I am going to present my paper on tribal women writing. Is my slide visible? Is my slide visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. First, I am talking about the status of tribal women and then some tribal women writers. The status of tribal women writers can be judged by their the status of tribal women can be judged by their role in tribal society. After 75 years of independence, the condition of tribal women is yet dismal and miserably dull. The tribal women work very hard, more than men in some cases. And almost all tribal women participate in economic activities with men or work harder than men work harder than men. The family economy and income depends on women. They suffer from unequal wages, exploitation, and at workplaces. Their young children also go with along with their mother, and due to this, they don't go to school and become dropout from their school. And this is the main reason for their low illiteracy. The tribal women are not only treated. The tribal women were treated as an object. They were not only oppressed by higher caste, even their own men don't give them respect. They don't know their right to raise their voice against their injustice and violence. Through the literary work, many writers draw the attention of common people towards the harsh and dull life of tribal women. Alice Akka. Elisaka, such a tribal woman who has given voice to tribal women. Her famous work, Elis Akka Ki Kahaniya, is a collection of stories. The tribal women are the protagonist of her stories and mainly focused on the coexistence of relationship between surrounding and natural world. Her stories describe a holistic view on tribal women and the society, including everyday life, violence, and deprivation. दुर्गा की बच्ची is Durga Ki Bachchi or Alma Ki Kalpanaएं is a story from her collection. This story deals with the friendship between a tribal woman and a Dalit woman, picking each other's life that also reflect the casteism of Indian society. Koyal Ki Ladli Sumari is a story by same author which deals with a teenager girl whose name is Sumari. She was raped when she go to forest to get herbs for her father. The tribal community blames and ostracizes her. Motiarin. Motiarin is a first anthology of poem by tribal writer Usha Kiran Atram. The book opens with a hard-hitting words that depict the abuse of tribal women within and outside the household. She asks about her identity and her existence. Goda is a poetry collection by Vaharu Sonani. Her poem has a long-lasting impact. The poem states some the appropriation of tribal voices in which many tribal experiences and world literary world and social experiences. Chapedu is a collection of four Telugu stories on Koya community by Padma Anasuya. Her four stories deals with various themes from inter-community marriage to death and vanning away of Koya community. In the story, Kakama Anusuya talks about the youth and how they look upon their own rituals as old and primitive. Her stories are old and layer of Koya community cultures. And here I conclude, tribal women play a major role in management of their natural, social, and economical resources, but still they remain backward due to the traditional values, illiteracy, and dominant rule in decision making and social evils and many other cultural activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vatsala. Now, I would like to call Ritika Nayan from MA Previous, VCW Rajghat. Ritika, are you there?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. I'm not able to present myself. Okay, I'll just start. Hello, everybody. My name is Ritika Nan. I'm from Vasanta College for Women. pursuing masters in English previous year. So my topic is exploring writings by women and women of tribal literature. It analyzes the tribal women and their contribution to society through various writers and their characters from Indian literature. It aims to the social standing of women, injustices and prejudices, cultural differences, etc. It is about their tribal traditions and how they are still the same in the changing society. It demonstrates the atrocities and discrimination faced by women in this patriarchal and misogynistic society, also dealing with the difference in the society of working women in cities and that of tribal areas. It presents the contribution of tribal writers in Indian literature to spread awareness and rise ever from tribal prejudices. The contributions cannot be overlooked in the society as it balances between the roots of their cultures and the modern pacing world where tribal people shouldn't be left behind. This paper will offer an opportunity to explore the injustices faced by women, but it will also provide a space to imagine a different kind of society where women's life might be improved and become equal to men's dominant rule. It will also deal with the problem of intersectionality and assimilation. Contribution of a few tribal women. The first one is Mamang Dai. She is an Indian poet, novelist, and journalist based in Itanagar. She received a Padma Shri in 2011 and Sahitya Academy Award in 2017 for his novel The Black Hill. Her family belongs to Adi tribe. The second one is Jacinta Kerketa. She is a poet, writer, and freelance journalist belonging to an Oraon Adivasi community of West Singhbhum district. In her poems, she highlights the injustices committed on the Adivasi communities along with their struggles. Ruby Hemrom. She is a founder and director of Adibani organization, which is a voice of Santhal people. She is an indigenous cultural practitioner, documentarian, writer, and publisher. She started writing stories for children about their origin because it's very important for children to know from where they came from. Esterine Kaur. She is a poet author whose majority of her writings are based in the lived realities of the people in Nagaland. Her works are A Naga Village, Remembered, Mari, etc. My paper will discuss with Mamang's Dai's The Black Hill. Mamang's The Black Hill is a novel set in mid-19th century in the northeastern regions. During that time, Britishers were seeking help to take over India and local tribes were trying to keep the so-called outsiders away from their territory. In this backdrop of looming war, Gemur from Abod tribe and Kajan Shah from Mishmi tribe fall in love and set out to marry, but the murder of priestess spoils their plan. It is a story of survival and highlights the importance of land of the tribes. Social trends in tribal society. In Abod tribes, boys were meant to be valiant and women were told to be coy. They were raised for marriage, but will eventually help them in the expansion of land. Intertribal relationships were banned, and they were outcasted when they went for intertribal relationship. Bride price was paid by man's family to compensate for marrying women or girls. Slave culture still persisted. Slaves bore child for their masters, but never asked anything in return. Women believed in superstitions and myths. For example, giving birth to twins is supposed to be a bad omen in Abod tribe. Polygamy, that is multiple female partner, was a common malpractice in this book. These writers and their work stand for the cultural heritage of the tribal identity that manifests in their rituals and customs, especially for women. But gradually, due to their contribution, tribal women were being introduced to the concept of feminism. They often question the audience about the women's identity in their works. They tell the struggles and hardships that they went through on a daily basis. Although tribal women have already started the struggle for their rights in different parts of country, it is only because of these small initiatives that women are acknowledging their privileges. With this, I rest. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ritika, for your presentation. Now, last but not the least, we have Oindrila Roy from MA Previous, VCW Rajghat. Oindrila?
Yes, am I audible, Prachi?
Yes, you are.
I'm visible. Am I? Mm,
No, you are not visible.
Okay, let me present. Okay. Maybe some internet issues. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Is it visible now?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone present here, my respected professors and my dear friends. Today, I want to speak about the topic Breaking the Barriers of Patriarchy, a struggle for identity by the women writers of Bengal. She reads books as one would breathe air to fill up and live, Annie Dillard. Patriarchy is the prime obstacle to women's advancement and development. The Indian women writers, and mainly the Bengali female writers, talk mostly about male ego and female desire for freedom. Through their writings, they oppose the male dominances over them and depict the injustices, the anguish, and the despair they received in a male dominated society. Traditionally, their works have been undervalued due to patriarchal assumptions about the superior worth of the male experience. An uneasy lack of confidence and a mood of secretiveness, however, marked the early forays of Bengali women in the literary field. Most women lacked the opportunity and courage to engage in their literary activities openly due to an unknown societal pride, and often ended their desire to speak out. The ones who could make it were either shut down or would ride under their veil. Some of the Bengali women writers unleashing their voice against patriarchy. A mother of 12 children who aspired to be literate in order to read religious books and recite hymns got agitated at the sight of pen and paper. But why? In her autobiography, Amar Jivan, the first ever autobiography of a Bengali female writer, Rasundari Devi writes that she used to curse herself for having such evil desires, since women from cultured households did not learn to read and write. Old traditional women would insinuate and curse the women who wanted to get literate. Yet, her desire outweighed her societal fear. Amar Jivan was a path breaking work, and this work created ripples in the society and gave the courage to many others like her. Ashapurna Devi hailed from an ultra Orthodox Bengali family. Her grandmother did not permit her and her sisters to attend school, since it would involve stepping out into the big, cruel world. Her pieces vividly portray the emergence of quintessential middle class Bengali women and the revolt against repression, angst, and the growing awareness. The Gyanpith Award winning author came into spotlight when her powerful trilogy got published. The three novels, Pratham Pratishruti, Subarnalata, Bukul Katha, depict women fighting patriarchy and liberating themselves through education. Many of her works are prescribed in school syllabuses. Born in 1926 to urban middle class, Mahashigadevi Devi exposed and denounced notions of male superiority, the institution of marriage that is responsible for female subservience, domestic violence, and gender biasness, all of which serve to tyrannize and victimize women. Devi's breath stories, Old Women, Mother of 1084, interrogate patriarchy and contest certain notions of womanhood, marriage, and widowhood within the patriarchal social order. Her Draupadi explicitly slashes out at the exploitation, humiliation meted out to the women. She is probably the most translated Indian woman writer. We consider ourselves free spirits, but our words remain unfree. Women are latecomers to writing and unwelcome.
That's what Navanita Devson said. She had a unique style of self expression while she portrayed complicated social, political, and psychological problems of the post colonial middle class Bengalis, often using women as central characters. Her renowned works, Kama Bodhini, Noti Navanita, and Shita de Kishuru, have got international recognition, resulting in a myriad of literary accomplishments. She always tried to construct a world where women can themselves inspire and complement men in all their needs, probably something she did herself. Arundhati Roy is one of the towering stars in the history of Indian fiction. Her debut and only novel, The God of Small Things, was awarded the Booker Prize in 1997. The novel portrays the truthful picture of the plight of Indian women, their great suffering, their humble submission, persecution, and undeserved humiliation in the male dominating society. The novel shows how different men and women are treated according to social norms. She presents three generations of women and how the patriarchy remains constant throughout. There is really no such thing as the voiceless. There are only the deliberately silenced or the preferably unheard, said she. Summing up, sometimes while reading different researches and books, it strikes me that most of the times other women, for example, the mothers, the grandmothers, were the primary reason that the daughters and girls in the family could not step out. If they would have supported the women, I think this issue of patriarchy and women oppression could not have lasted this long. It's very amazing to see in recent times how women are actually supporting other women, fighting for their own rights, speaking out the issues. The struggles by the feminist writers, activists has finally paid off. It is rightly said by Maya Angelou, each time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it, possibly without claiming it, she stands for up for all women. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oindrila, for your presentation. Now, no more students are left for the presentation. Ma'am?
Now Sonali is going to give the vote of thanks. Just wait. Sonali, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Sonali, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I got the golden opportunity to give vote of thanks. So I just wrote one of the poem. Like listening those papers, I wrote those poems in my regional language, and here it goes. बहुत सुन लेनी बहुत जान लेनी लड़कियां ई वा लड़कियां ऊ वा बहुत समझ लेनी हम अपरिभाषित बानी ना आज तू हमरा परिताड़ित करब कभी झूठा छाप के तो कभी ऊ बता के जेकर हमर दूर दूर तक कोई फासला ही नहीं के देख लेना ना आज कैद नानू कर पैला हमरे क्रिएटिव माइंड के जंजीर छोटा पड़ गेल हुई हम ऊ अनंत बानी सागर से भी गहरा बानी सो let me bestow my vote of thanks. Like here I quote, feeling gratitude and not expressing. It's like wrapping present and not giving it. Good afternoon, everyone. And here, first vote, I would like to thank the guest speaker of today, Sasti Irsad ma'am, for giving her insightful session. And her paper also was too much good. So I admit a great honor and privilege. Now I admit a great honor and privilege to vote of thanks of this occasion. Like, let me start my vote of thanks with Almighty, the Creator and the Preserver, for his countless blessing and making the event resounding success. On behalf of Vasanta College for Women, I extend a very heartily vote of thanks to Alka ma'am, our department professors, Manjri Zhunjunwala ma'am, Saurabh sir, Manjri Sukra ma'am, Rasna ma'am, Sunita ma'am, for organizing such event. And also I would like to thank all the participants, and ends with one quote. I can nothing other answer make from Shakespeare. I can nothing other answer makes but thanks and thanks and thanks. The rest is silence. Thank you.
Excellent poem, Sonali. And once again, a big congratulations to all the presenters. You all presented wonderful papers. And many of you already have sent your full paper. Accordingly, we will be getting back to you. So thank you so very much for joining. We are now ending the session. Have a great day ahead. Take care.